alarm in the background?
Was
Hello,
that me
all.
or sorry?
Yes, that was yes. We were just commenting on that. There appeared to be a little alarm going off at Shay Elfbait tonight. Did sound like it was coming from you.
No, actually, it was coming from me. I was just wondering if you could hear it.
Oh,
it
yes,
was,
I could.
Yeah, I could
Because
hear
I
it
thought
as
it was
well.
in my neighborhood.
I knew it wasn't in mine. But hello, all. Welcome to this week's Midweek Geek. I am, as you all know, I am the old geek because I'm old and I'm a geek. And we also have with us Mage's Musings because he's a mage and he's musing, and Elfbait because he's.
I bait the elves. I don't know.
Is that what it is?
Because he's an elf and he's baiting. I don't know.
Well, yeah, elf bait used to be the things that we would throw out there so the game companies would steal them. So, but
So, greetings, all of you, and hello to chat. We have Halakar, we have Kabuki Kid, Ian McDonald, and who else is there? The Jeans about as well. Grumpy Old Slan, Daniel Kearney, Dave Mills. Hello, all of you. As always, we are simultaneously streaming, but as has become the norm last few weeks. So spread the love between all the channels. Give everybody the clicks. Give everybody the nice thumbs because it YouTube likes that sort of thing, and it makes all of us
Feed the hungry algorithm is a slavering
yes,
monster that needs to be fed.
speaking of
Yes.
favorite monsters, no, is there the least favorite is the algorithm.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not a big fan of the YouTube algorithm monster. It's a very slippery. It's somewhat. I think it's lawful evil. Twists the rules in its favour. It's got a very good armor class, and it has some form of resistance to persuasion because it doesn't listen to you.
It also seems to polymorph at will.
Now I want to stat out the YouTube algorithm as a D&D monster.
Yes, well, that's your job for the stream. We'll have it on stream by the end. Then that'd be a good idea. Hello, Frederick. That's a new name. Whose stream have you joined on? I can see you've got.
It looks like he's on mine.
Links. Right.
Yeah, okay. I think Grumpy is coming in through everybody's.
Oh yeah, Grumpy likes to share. He shares himself around a bit. I won't go into any more details. Okay, tonight we're going to be talking about monsters, but first things first, we're going to talk about our games that we've had recently. Thursday's struggling a little bit at the moment due to Saxius's workload, which is a bit of a pain. He's got a lot on his plate. That's why he's not able to get in on the Wednesday stream quite as much at the moment as he has in the past. I saw he was moonlighting on Elfbait Sunday though, so
yeah,
yes, I got to watch that the next day because I'm busy on a Sunday afternoon more often than not. I played on Saturday. We played some MERP. We had a shortage of players, unfortunately, because of various issues that people have at the moment on Saturdays. So we just did a bit of tidying up of loose ends, preparation for next time. And then my Monday one was called off because of issues.
I love how you ominously say that, because of issues, to suggest there's more to the story, but you're not going to say.
Well, let's just say there was been a few mistakes made, and things could have been a little bit better communicated. And
issues,
yeah. Bit of inexperience came into play, a bit of misunderstanding, I think. Yeah, it's one of those things. But anyway,
like within the game or in real life?
Within the game. The game.
Let's say
we've got a new DM who's running a very ambitious campaign, and he's done a good job so far. But he's discovering this is what I said to him. I believe he's discovering one of the main problems with 5th edition, and in that 5th edition is designed for a fairly linear, fairly high-powered, high fantasy type game. He's using this product that purports to be very sandboxy. It is very hard to run a consistently smooth and challenging sandbox game in 5th edition, because 5th edition characters spike at certain power levels, and so he tried a bit of adjustment.
What product is he running, by the way, if I can ask?
Odyssey of the Dragon Lords.
Okay.
And so he adjusted a few. He's been adjusting a few encounters along the way, and he's generally done it fine so far. But there's this one encounter where he gave one of the enemies a power that was a bit out of the ballpark, and it caused a few problems. So it's one of those things. But he's learned. He'll learn from that. And as I've said in our chat, there are people with decades of experience who have struggled with this aspect of 5th edition. That the idea of that resting cycle, and how fast characters improve, and if you're trying to run a sandbox game, the characters are dictating the pace a lot of the time, which means they're going into most encounters with all their powers fully charged up. So it becomes exponentially more difficult to keep them challenged. It's a tough ask. Kabuki Kid, sandboxy games can work in 5th edition if I think the DM needs a degree of homebrewing experience to do it. Yeah, they can work. I know. I mean, I've run the Lost City in 5th edition, and it worked, but I felt I was battling more and more and more against the system as the game went on.
Yeah, I mean, my current Monday game is pretty sandboxy, but because D&D 5e is a little bit, I don't know, it's you do have to do a little bit more work as a DM, yeah, because it has too many assumptions of balance that are built into it, whereas like AD&D really doesn't assume balance too heavily.
Quite.
But you can throw balance out the window for 5e and play it that way, and it's just
a
matter of adjusting the approach. Yeah,
that's what I do, and I find that it's not too horrible. But a lot of 5th edition players might have a problem with it that way.
I think that the problem is that Odyssey of the Dragon Lords has you as defined heroes, and it presents itself as this big heroic campaign at the same time while trying to be sandboxy. And I think it's more of an issue with the product. And he says that the DM's part of the Discord that discuss it, and he says lots of people have had problems in there with it. They come up with different sort of workarounds. So I think it's one of those cases where it's one of those. It's a challenge for a DM to run it, even if you've got a few decades of DMing under your belt. And he's brand new, so I think he just made a mistake with this one particular encounter, and it caused one player to feel very hard done by. But the way a certain power had been presented, the DM did overdo it somewhat. It's just he rode roughshod over a few assumptions, and I don't want to go into any more details, but he cranked up a little more than he should, shall we say. Anyhow, let's get on to monsters. I've done enough rambling.
What about Mage's Musings games?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Tell me about your games, chaps. Tell me about your games. It's not just about me, is it?
It is your channel. I mean, I had two games, both AD&D. So Saturday was Team Good, and we were talking briefly about it before the stream started with the kobolds. It was what inspired the recent short, the Mook rule, where the team basically took on an entire tribe of kobolds, over 100 kobolds, and they thought they were in trouble. And then they realized, okay, they have a 5th level paladin, a 5th level ranger, a 3rd level ranger, a 5th level fighter, a 4th level monk, who as I was saying before, I house rule that monks get the Mook rule as well, plus a cleric and a thief, who they don't get that benefit. But all told, they had like 23 attacks per round. And when they realized that, they was like, oh, we could probably take them out in a couple rounds.
Every attack that hit was probably killing a
kobold. Their minimum damage of the main characters was enough to kill a kobold, even a full strength kobold. So all they had to do was strike, and that piece was removed from the board. Kobolds tried overwhelming them, and as they do, overbear rules. But even their strength was high enough to repel all that. So it was a lot of fun. It was interesting. And it was really the first time that group had seen, even though I've been playing with them for years, they had finally seen the full extent of how the Mook rule can apply in mass combat, and just how warrior types can just cut swaths through masses of enemies. So,
like Gimli and Legolas in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and Aragorn for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And did they keep count as they went along?
No. Well, actually, yes, they did, because there was a bounty on kobold. We just took the pieces and put them in a pile. It's like, these are your dead, because these are the ones you can collect the tails for to take in for the bounty. So I had little tokens. I didn't have enough of my usual Order of the Stick mini, so I just had numbered tokens. But so it was fun. That was a good one. And Sunday marks sort of a bit of a shift, as that was the Night Below team. The Team Evil has exited Heronshire, and therefore the Night Below story. So the Night Below will probably be on hiatus until somebody goes back into Heronshire.
Right.
So that was interesting. But they finally got out. Half the game was spent giving them their XP and doing the level ups, because they got so much. They had a lot of loot. Some characters had previously died, but no character deaths on that day. But a lot of character jumps. So yeah, Team Evil is done, and which probably works for me, because that gives me time to catch up on my OSE review caps, which are now, as of Friday, going to be 9 or 8 sessions behind on the recaps.
And the voice is recovering, so that's it.
The voice is recovering. Yes, Merlinster Gandaldor will be appearing in videos as of tomorrow.
Good. Before we just go to Elfbait, just going to say hello to those who've joined since I last said hello to people. Mar Hockman's in chat. Hello, Mar Hockman. And I've just seen Squirrel Hermit has joined. Hello, the Squirrel. Any games from you, Elfbait?
Had my Monday game didn't happen again, but we did have our session 0 for the game I'm playing in with Saxious GMing 5th edition. That was really fun. We got together and sort of collaboratively created our frontier base. It's a frontier wilderness exploration setting. And so we kind of went around and created like the 5 top NPCs that sort of run the area. And that was fun, kind of collaborative, going back and forth and finding art for them, and just kind of talking about like what kind of a wilderness, what sort of position our characters were in, and sort of the standing. It looks to be a pretty good campaign. It's going to be fun. We did this interesting roundabout where we started out with really gritty rules for like rests and stuff, and then the more we deliberated on it, we kind of decided, okay, let's play it rules as written and see if it really becomes a problem, and if Saxious can keep the pressure on to where, yes, Goodberry is a spell, for example, which often mitigates all the concerns about adventuring or survival-based adventuring. However, if the pressure is on and your casters really have to make those choices of, do I use this spell for Goodberry or something else? So we figured we'd play it like that, and we did talk about, we can revisit it, see if it's feeling right, and then come back to it. But it's pretty cool. It's it's set up to be a very resource limited. It's weeks worth of sea journey back and forth, back to the home kingdom where we're at. From where we're at, I should say, we're on this frontier with a fort and a little carving out of the wilderness, and then that's all we have. Other than trading with the locals, everything that we might request materials wise is like you put the order in, and then you wait 6 weeks or more for it to get to and and back to you. So it should be good. But no, that was fun. Met a bunch of new people.
Cool, good stuff. And speaking of new people, Brian's joined us. Hello, Brian. Catching up at the moment at 1.5 times speed. So yes, we are talking very, very quickly. Or if I talk like this, I might sound normal. And Michael, both regular names, Michael Stronghold and Brian James, both regulars on the channel. So anyhow, I asked people who are going to take part in tonight's stream to write down 5 of their favorite monsters and to be prepared to shill for those monsters. And I'm wondering now if we're going to have any that are the same. I'm going to go out on a limb now, and I don't think anybody will predict any of my list apart from maybe one.
I don't know how well I can shill for a monster, but
yeah, even the idea of coming up with a favorite is tricky. But ones that I enjoy.
Admit, two of my favorites are actually more categories than actual monsters.
Now, I did put a poll in chat as well. Is it still in there? The Demons versus Devils one.
It was before the stream started, but I don't see it anymore.
Has it disappeared?
No, it's just it's still there. It's at the very top.
Okay, well, I can't see it because I'm not in YouTube. What's it? Anyone want to tell me the results, Demons or Devils?
Let me refresh here. Last I looked, it was Demons. When I voted, it was Demons. It is Demons 67, Devils 33.
This is why democracy doesn't work, because the people are always wrong. Simple as that.
I mean, I prefer demons, but
I prefer devils. Devils all the way. Lawful evil is so much more dastardly than chaotic evil. Anyway,
for me, it's purely based on which of the critters I liked the most.
Right.
In the monster books. I mean, yeah, I prefer the variety of demons over devils. So. That's me.
Oh, right. Anyway, before we start, I would like everybody in chat to everyone gets one guess, and I'll see if any one of you get any of the monsters on this. And I will tell you now, I have 2 monsters from Monster Manual 2, 1 from the Monster Manual, 1 from Deities and Demigods, and 1 from Fiend Folio. I tried to spread it around as much as possible. Exactly, Slan. That's the whole point of a democracy. The people are commonly wrong. You can be wrong. Anyway, anyone like to guess a monster that's in my list? And let's see how far my lag is behind on StreamYard, because I've not seen any of the votes come up yet. Mage's Musings thinks I like the new one, Ghoul. No. I do, but no. No. Nilbog, no. No. Aboleth. That would be in my top 10. Aboleth would be in my top 10, but it's not. It's not in my top 5. I will say that I was sat on the toilet earlier contemplating these, and the Aboleth was one of the ones that came to mind. I do like Yuan Ti, but they're not on my list. Texas Chainsaw Bunny, sadly. Sounds great, but no. Grimlocks. No. My house is a democracy. I ask everyone what they want for dinner before I tell them it's steak and potatoes.
Steak and potatoes.
I've had steak for tea tonight. I had a lovely piece of steak for tea. No, thank you. No beholders. No. You're all going to be wrong. Okay. So,
at this point, we'll just type out all the monsters and
yeah. Again, I liked farts because they've got a potentially smutty name. But no. Right. Okay. Mage, the Red Dragons now. Mage, do you want to start us off with your first monster? Give us a shot.
All righty then. These are in no particular order, so I'll just do them the order I thought of them. A monster that I've had some fun using in the past are gibberlings. Right. From, I think, Monster Manual 2, basically hordes of hungry monkey men or weird creatures. They come at you in swarms. So one or two, they're not much of a problem, but when they come at you by the hundreds, they can be terrifying. And they're afraid of the light, so they only come at night. I remember the first time I used them, I had a whole aliens thing, an NPC they rescued who was terrified. She describes that they only come at night mostly. So yeah, gibberlings. What's great about them is you get your party camped at night in the middle of a vast wilderness, and suddenly they hear these screams in the night, and this murmuring in the distance getting louder and louder. Depending on the numbers, fighting can be futile. You better hope you have very bright light and fireballs at your disposal.
Have you ever read the expanded lore on them in the Ecologies in Dragon Magazine?
I did not.
They are horrible in how they reproduce.
I'll have to read that.
They effectively infect people that they attack, and then those people transform into gibberlings, or they burst out of them. I can't remember. It's one of the two.
I'll look into that. Yeah, I was kept it a mystery as to where they come from and how they reproduce.
It also talks about some really cool elements about them. Is even if the party doesn't encounter them, they're a great excuse for why dungeon monsters are suddenly on the surface, because gibberling populations often move in and
go underground,
displace dungeon denizens.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they're great. They came about in several of my games just purely randomly. I had them on a random encounter chart, but it was like a really populated chart, like a rolling percentile, and they were like a 1% chance, and they came up 3 times in a row.
Oh, jeez.
One of my players like, your charts are obviously broken if you're getting that many gibberlings. It's like, look at this chart. There's literally a 1% chance on a 1 in 10 chance of an encounter.
Considering their number appearing.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, these are fun little monsters. The players got terrified every time one came up, but
Biff's just got one of mine.
Yeah, that's one on my list as well. So we do have some overlap.
We are going to clap. And Dave Mills, the Sons of Cuse. I actually crossed those out to put the gibbering Moutho in. So. Sons of Cuse are my sixth one. The car alarm is Mage.
Yeah, hold on, I'll go close my door there.
So gibberlings, or gibberlings, whatever you want to call them. The only thing that put me off them is the fact that one of the least interesting encounters in one of my favorite modules features a whole horde of them. It's one of those sort of throwaway encounters that feel like it gets in the way a little in UK4 When a Star Falls. I didn't think they suited the adventure. Aside from that, yeah, I like them, but it just put me off how they were used in that adventure.
I was just briefly reading the wiki on gibberlings.
So we do need to decide: are they gibberlings or are they gibberlings?
I always called them gibberlings, but
I was going with the soft G myself.
Yeah, I'm a soft G person.
It always sounded like a Jabberwocky-esque word name, so gibberling seemed more, I don't know, more Jabberwocky-ish.
I will say, Gene, the crypt thing is awesome. It's also one of the best pieces of artwork in the Fiend Folio.
It's also one of the most annoying monsters in all of D&D.
Oh,
the one that teleports you, right?
Teleports each person to a different place.
Yes.
It's like, what the? You want to piss off your party real quick? You want to have them like collectively flip your giant dining room table? Well, that's how you have it happen.
They're the ones that chose to go into the crypt. They weren't invited.
Maybe a Sararak just captured the spirit of a crypt thing, and that's what the Tomb of Horrors is.
So, did you hear why I'm a little ambivalent on the gibberlings, Sean?
I did not. I had to take off my headset to go close my balcony.
The module UK4, When a Star Falls. I love the module. I love the setting. I love the plot to it. I love the storyline. There's some great encounters. But there is one that gibberlings are used in it, and they feel a little bit out of place. So it put me off them a little bit.
Well, that's not a fault of the monster. Don't be racist against the monster. That's a fault of an idiot writer.
Well, no, it's a great. I mean, it's otherwise it's a really good adventure. It's just that when I've run it, that gibberling encounters just felt like a bit of a speed bump, almost anything. So anyway,
so yes, my the first monster on my list, we're going with gibberlings. The horror aspect, the physical horror aspect. I got some body horror stuff later.
I think that the worst thing about them in the UK4 is that they are riding horse minimals. Those little diddy horse things, and that's all a bit unnecessary.
I love the idea of these primal hungry creatures just like tripping over each other to get at you to eat, and just this is
almost
swarm.
like having a massive pack of chimpanzees after you.
Yeah,
but that would be better.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah,
gibberlings strike me as almost Lovecraftian sort of a horror, in the sense of Lovecraft's like subspecies that were, that he always talks about, the various creatures raised by blah blah blah, that then there's lots of instances in Lovecraftian horror et al, not just Lovecraft, where you read about these subspecies that developed and like were waiting in lying in wait in places, and they kind of can fit that role too.
There's certainly an unpleasantness about them. I do like the way the take on them from Baldur's Gate. If you remember, they were used in the Baldur's Gate
the games
adventures.
They were in such few numbers. They were pretty easily defeated by your party.
Yeah. They were in low level bits. There was a disease gibberling, wasn't there? I think in it as well. And they made this amusing noise when they attacked you, which was good. So, Elfbait, do you want to shelf one of yours? Seems you've disappeared.
I'm here. I'm just off camera.
Clearly, trolls. He's got the little troll doll there.
Well, you've just guessed one of them, but we won't go there. The first on my list, and in no particular order, is the Gith. The lore behind the Gith, also the fact that the Fiend Folio was like the first monster book I ever bought, and that cover is just, and the cover art is just front and back Gith, whether it's Gith Yankee, Gith Zeri, and then over time that you had even more Gith. You had like the Pirates of Gith and Spelljammer, and then you had the Gith on Dark Sun. Their origin story, their lore, the fact that their city in the astral plane is built on the body of a dead god, and that their queen is a lich who basically removed. I mean, just the lore is just great. With the Gith Yankee, their queen is a lich who puts them through a test, which is really just a way to eliminate competition because she just consumes their souls. Their weird association with red dragons was just kind of oddball and out there, but the idea of having a red dragon fly in with several Gith Yankee on its back is just horrifying. But and the Silver Sword lore, they're just so full of really good lore. The fact that they're in the astral plane, but if you get into their sort of expanded ecology, they have a presence in the prime material because they have to reproduce on the prime material because time doesn't move on in the astral. So they have these fortresses in the prime material where they have their young and they raise them to an adult age and then they come into the astral. The fact that, if you ever get a hold of one of their silver swords, they're going to come after you and, relentlessly pursue you. And the fact that they can just slip out of the astral wherever you are and find that come after you with that sword
yeah.
is just, there's just so much going on. And then you expand that into the Githzeri and that weird conflict and the fact that the Githzeri aren't really evil and they're all monks instead of being weird, warrior wizards. Just there's a lot going on there. It also invites the question of, are there other subsects of Gith out there? Because like I said, you have the Githyanki and the Githzeri in Fianfolio, but then you have the Pirates of Gith that are in, Spelljammer, and the weird Gith that are on Athos. So,
I like them, and I like the idea of them having that sort of animosity, that hatred with the Githzeri and the two races not getting on. But the problem I've always had is I tend to play a lot of games at lower levels, and they're difficult enemies to incorporate in lower level games because of quite how brutal they are.
We got red dragons and all sorts of stuff with those. So yeah. It's not a low level, and they're fighting mind flayers. So you're at that like 10th plus level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never actually used them then, so I think they're great in concept. But as you say, John, it's like the higher level. I'm not going to toss a Githyanki at my players and just watch them get butchered.
Well, they really are intended for high level, anyways. I mean, if it's the whole astral connection. One of my favorite Dragon Magazine adventures is called Fetafencer, and it's the quest for a Holy Avenger that stands out amongst other Holy Avengers, but it's being kept in an astral fortress of the Githyanki. So the adventure is going to the astral plane and infiltrating or invading this Githyanki fortress to get this sword for your paladin.
I'm going to go on to my first one now, and I'm very much influenced by the artwork I see for the creatures. The image that they put across, and I do tend to like quite a lot of. I've only used one of these sort of things on my list, but I do tend to like creatures that you can use in numbers against higher level characters to provide a challenge, and in smaller numbers, you can still throw them at lower level characters. There's a degree of flexibility about them, depending on how many you want to put, whether you want to make it a big lair or what have you. And again, they're used in one of my favorite adventures, but in a completely different way to which the Gibberlings were used. And this is the Darrow.
Oh yeah, those are good ones.
I love they are a challenge to low-level characters because they've got a wide number of things that they can do. They are highly intelligent. They have certain individuals amongst them who employ magic, which again spreads the challenge around. It varies the way you can use them. I like the idea of them coming attacking with these little hooks, unbalancing player characters and then just diving in and tearing them to bits. But more than anything, it's quite simply how they look. They are little dwarves with massive white pupilless eyes.
And the fact that they're just kind of nuts too.
Aren't they? They're in the Monster Manual too, aren't they?
They are, yes, yeah.
Okay.
They're so. I think they look freaky. They look frightening, and it's. But for me, it's just their versatility as an enemy. pretty much any party going underground, I can consider Darrow as a suitable foe for them to come across. Because even playing them by the book, I've got all these options, and they're I love monsters that are twisted and very, very obviously evil, and they are. You can really go to town if you want a horrific campaign using Darrow, because the way they're written, I think they're wonderful creatures. And have I killed conversation?
No,
not at all.
It's kind of a weird one with it being all opinion based. It's like, what do you am I supposed to argue? Am I supposed to argue against you?
Argue against me, agree with me, or whatever.
I do like the Darrow, just being an interesting Underdark variation on one of the classic demi-human races. Yes. They're also based on a science fiction story from Hollow Earth stuff.
See, I wouldn't know that you shouldn't have told me that. They'll drop out of my top 10 now. I know
probably even worse if I tell you there were robots. But
I would just think that there was Morlocks. The Morlocks from
that is literally the Grimlock in the Fiend Folio. But
Zytek on my chat stream has a question. If you play an adventure in other planes in 5th edition, do you use planar spellcasting rules from 2nd edition up, or do you stick with 5th edition rules with no difference? It's not quite on topic, but they're asking a question here.
Interestingly enough, also, John, Darrow is, according to the internet, a slang Australian term for a disheveled and unkempt person. Synonymous with the American term wino.
Oh, perfect. They've even got a great name. Okay, Omanal, did you get the memo for tonight's stream?
I saw that it was top 5 monsters. Just real quick, what was Sean's favorite?
Well, not favorite, but I added gibberlings to the conversation. I just want to answer Zytek's question before we move on. I just tend to, whatever system I'm playing. So if I'm playing 5e, I'll use whatever rules are in 5e. If I'm playing First Ed, I'll just stick with those rules, even if I'm cross-pollinating. Stick with whichever system I'm running at a given time.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this up, and it's been a while since I've actually looked at them. And again, I look at also multiple systems. I love, what is it, the Tangler creeping vines with the spikes that grab the characters and suck their blood?
Oh, what is that again?
I can't remember what they're called. It's like they're like creeping vines or tangling vines. But
creeping strangler.
Yeah, but whenever they grab the characters, they hold them fast and then they suck the blood like 1 to 4 points of damage per round.
Are they like the vampire roses from Palace of the Silver Princess? That sort of thing?
There's a couple of monsters in D&D that do that.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I believe that they have the roses and stuff like that. But that's the whole point, is I like that kind of thing because you can throw it at low-level characters. You could theoretically throw it at higher-level characters and kind of more of a grappling rule. But I like that idea of not only do the players have to worry about monsters, they also have to worry about the plants as well to attack.
It's a really good thing. Those sorts of things are great to just place incidentally too, where they almost fit the role of traps without being a trap. So they're not as contrived, say, as a trap. Like if you're in an old ruin and there's just a vine creeping up some wall, and your party's trying to sneak along to keep out of the sight of another monster. Oh no. The true monster was the wall all along.
And sometimes players don't even realize it. They look over and they see the skeleton on the ground, and it has the tangler vine on it. They're just like, oh, the vine must have grown through the skeleton. It's been dead for so long, not realizing that the vine is what caused it. And then it also allows you to go after, how do I want to, they can be sneaky, and also the other aspect, which is it allows you to go for the high armor class. And when I say high, we're talking first edition. So your characters that have the 6, 7, 8, 9s, and 10 armor classes, because the players are like, oh, the fighter's taking the lead. I don't have to worry about said monsters so much. And then they can come around and grab them. And they don't have to be instantly lethal either, which is nice. So now now the players have a desperation from there. And if you have to be quiet, like you were talking about before, oh, we were sneaking in here. Well, now the magic user has to scream, hey, I need help before I die. And all of a sudden, now you've alerted the bandits that have avoided this area because they know that they're creeping vines or whatever.
Or the gargoyles that were guarding
Yeah,
the entrance just around the around the wall, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Just reminds me of a game of Rogue Trader I played back in the day where we're using those old randomly rolled battlefield rules, and my Imperial Guard goes to hide behind some rocks, and there are vines on the rocks, and they turned out to be strangler vines. So now not only am I being shot at by orcs, but I'm also having to fight with the cover.
Yeah.
So I think that's four good ones to start with. Let's see who's going to come up with the first duff one. Go on, Mage.
Oh, are we rotating around again? Okay.
We are. Yes, we are. Yes.
All right. So, the next one on my list is going to be probably a little boring, but I love using them. I guess my favorite undead to use are ghouls.
Oh, these nearly made my list because I
Ghouls
love mixing them in with a few ghasts as well.
Ghasts, yep, they're by extension, so a subcategory there. I don't know. I don't know if it was intentional or subconscious, but I'm looking at my list. Most of my monsters here are monsters that'll eat you. So I guess I might have some subconscious fear there. But I do play one little twist with ghouls. My tweak is that because they have the claw bite thing. I do it so the claw attack is what paralyzes you, but the bite is what turns you. So you only turn into a ghoul if you've been bitten and die. Right, so classic Romero style thing. The zombie bites you, and the zombies in Romero are more ghoulish anyway.
But of course, they claw you to paralyze you, and then they bite you when you're paralyzed.
Right, but
they start eating you.
You might resist the paralysis, or the claw attacks will miss. You still get bitten, and then what I do is I roll a d4 plus 1, and that's how many days the infection will potentially last. Right, so if you die within that time frame, the ghoul bite still affects you in your turn. And so players who get bitten by ghouls in my games are like, okay, keep them safe, keep this person safe. They got to live a few days. And the other thing I do, which adds to the tension, is when a character who's been bitten by a ghoul dies, I roll d4, and that's how many rounds before they reanimate. So they're up and at you really fast, and that can be really bad in a protracted combat when your allies are suddenly turning into ghouls in mid-fight.
One thing's I like ghouls because I like monsters that really put the frighteners on the players, and ghouls aren't particularly potent. And I mean, if you've got a few elves in the party, you should be okay.
You should be, but I've seen just a couple of ghouls rip through parties that should otherwise have survived. Yeah. So they can be terrifying.
Because the reason I see them as terrifying is because they are attacking you to eat you. That is their sole purpose.
Yeah,
and thus the players know if they're paralyzed, then that ghoul is going to drag that character away and just start chewing on them.
One thing I like about ghouls personally is they scale well. I think one ghoul at a low level is a good challenge for a whole party of low-level characters.
Yeah.
But more ghouls, they're one of those monsters that doesn't seem quite as boring and cheesy just by increasing the number. One ghoul can be almost like a creepy stalking horror for a low-level, or that surprise thing that you run into in a graveyard, like or a tomb or something like that. But higher level party can then encounter a bunch of them, and then you can always throw in that ghast. So it's a nice, thematically it scales well, and it doesn't seem cruddy. And even at really high levels where you might use like skeletons and zombies in say like an undead themed heavy higher level dungeon, you can put ghouls in there now. You could put you could even go full Lovecraft and have the city of the ghouls.
Yes. I've seen chat have already mentioned Lovecraft.
There's a whole freaking campaign done by Kobold Press for a ghoul kingdom. And then Sandy Peterson even also did another Island of the Ghouls.
And the French themed game that we ran with Omanal, there was there were ghouls living beneath the sewers beneath Paris.
Well, that makes sense. The catacombs.
But they were beneath the catacombs.
Well, and the thing is, it just scales, and you can also upscale those ghouls, like Ghoul King or a Ghoul Chief or a Ghoul Shaman. It's one of those undead that really can fit your roles. I mean, you could have some strange house on the edge of the kingdom that is populated by a bunch of ghouls who are still wearing the trappings of, nobility or something like that.
Well, and like most undead, if you want to, you can make them intelligent more than what they are, represented, because you can give them the whole structure there, and just depends if you want to make them like the ghouls that we met under the catacombs, or if you just are making them roving bands that go and eat people, and they just, I don't know. I was just watching Bone Tomahawk, where they went into the city and grabbed people and brought them back to eat them at a later time. And with the paralysis, you can still do a rescue mission without them being instantly dead.
The thing with the ghouls in that Cthulhu game is they weren't actively harming any humans. They were living beneath Paris, but they were going into the graveyards of Paris, which of course were choked with bodies during the French Revolution, and taking whatever they want from the graveyard to eat. And it allowed me to.
Of course, Lovecraft ghouls are not the same as D&D ghouls in that they're not undead and they're extra dimensional beasts, but you can play them that way.
The idea is that they've become ghouls because they've eaten human flesh at some point. That's the idea. And the idea that these ones had survived a period in Paris when there'd been very little food by consuming bodies, and thus had given themselves over to becoming ghouls. And one thing I did like is there was a bit where I said one of the ghouls in the corner, Slan's character, his girlfriend, one of the ghouls was consuming a body that, it's headless at the moment, but that dress it's wearing, it looked a bit like something that she would wear. Because at that point, his character didn't know whether she was alive or dead. Yes. We have a DK sliding in as well. I thought you were poorly, DK.
I still am, but I'm a lot better than I was.
Okay.
I had to take off work today. It's like headaches, stiff joints, stomach pains. Not good. I might have got bitten by a ghoul and I didn't even realize it.
You're just courting Nurgle.
Let us know if you start craving human flesh.
But I say,
I hope Nurgle didn't do anything. God, that'd be awful.
With ghouls and the scaling, a couple of really good adventures have used ghouls really well. I've caused a total party kill against the Cult of the Reptile God with the ghouls that are living under the town, and that's a group of 3 or 4 of them. But also, right near the start of Slave Pits of the Undercity, there's an attack by ghouls and ghasts, which absolutely brutalizes a party of mid-level characters. As you say, they can be used to challenge parties of a wide variety of levels.
Paralysis is key, right? Is one bad roll and even the strongest fighter is out. If that paralysis takes out the cleric, who has the chance of repelling them, well, the high-level cleric will disintegrate ghouls if they can get their turning undead out, right?
Yeah.
But if they're paralyzed.
Speaking of adventures, though, I actually, for my Amherst game I'm going to run next month, there's an actual region. Since you were talking about the Cobalt Press thing, Elfbait, it's called the Ghoul Keep in the Ghoul Lands. And it's run by in the ancient history of the setting, this powerful sorcerer who comes back as a ghoul. He's literally a Vecna analog. He's trying to get all his body parts back to come back and take over the territory. Cool. And he's like an 18th level caster. He's insanely powerful. I think it's like 9th level, I don't know, 8th or 9th level magic, and he's got all this magic swag, and I think he's even got a dragon, like a Draco Lich style undead dragon under his control. Like, he's no joke. He's got all the other stuff that ghouls have. Yeah,
that's high level stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let's move on to Elfbait's next one then.
Next one I have on my list is probably not going to be on too many people's lists, but I like it not only in its base form, but to tinker around with it for monster variants, and that's the Umber Hulk.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like the Umber Hulk just in its base. As a base monster, it comes across as just a pile of hit points, and then it has its confusion ability, which is cool. But then it's a great platform to layer other effects on. Like I have run Scarab Hulks that are found in tombs where there are mummies, and they're basically Umber Hulks that also carry mummy rot. I've done Earthquake in an Asian setting. I had basically a Jishin Mushi version of the Umber Hulk, which is the Earthquake beetles from Japanese myth, where the Umber Hulk would sit there and start pounding its, they've got those big ham fists in most of the art. He starts pounding its fists on the ground and creates an earthquake effect. There's just thematically, there's a lot to work with there. You can make them spiky. You can give them acid blood. Just a good platform.
I think the idea of all those multiple eyes is wonderfully freaky, but I found them incredibly annoying when I played Baldur's Gate.
There's a lot of monsters in Baldur's Gate that are really annoying, though.
Yes. But they're only annoying in the game because the computer limitation of the way they handled it was poor. Like, for example, if you're playing a tabletop RPG and you can take the penalty to avert your eyes, but lessen the chance of being confused. Whereas in the video game is basically this like beam that shoots at you and you're confused and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I remember the basilisks in Baldur's Gate. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was
they were
really
easy
fun.
They were easy to take out.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, they're easy to take out if you don't get petrified the moment you see them.
Yeah. If you know where they are, just use a scroll of protection from petrification on your best fighter. Give him haste and run him in, and he can mash them all in no time.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple one, but Umber Hulks are the next on my list just because I like to play with them, and I've used them in a couple of variations. I even did one where they were essentially undead reanimated suits of armor. Basically, you kill the Umber Hulk, and then it shambles off, and then another living creature came out from inside of it.
Sheds its skin.
Basically it pops open and the pilot jumps out, basically.
Oh.
Creepy, use of that was kind of inspired by the Spirit Warriors from Spelljammer, where they were copying some anime stuff, but
right, on to my next one. It's in Deities and Demigods. Anyone knows Deities and Demigods well? Do you want to guess at which one I like from Deities and Demigods?
I already guessed. You said it was wrong, so
I'm thinking you get Fenrir, or you get Yorkman, the snake.
No. I show you the artwork for it.
Oh, the Wild Hunt. That's not a monster. That's a demigod.
It's not a demigod at all. It's not a demigod at all.
It's the Wild Hunt. Hearn.
It's the Wild Hunt.
I was literally going to make the joke of him picking the Cthulhu mythos. I wasn't far off, to be perfectly honest.
I love the whole concept of the Wild Hunt. It's incredibly spooky. That piece of artwork, I think, is Jim Vosloff's best piece of artwork, apart from the Descent to the Depths of the Earth cover. I love the idea of this pack of hounds relentlessly pursuing, and the fact that the master of the hunt will hang back and not get involved until everyone involved in the hunt who has been drawn in has had their chance to kill.
Reminds me of a short. Oh, good.
And if you can keep running until dawn, you avoid the hunt. You can avoid it. But it's just so panicky. It's so panicky, and I just think it's a really, really something I've never thrown into an adventure, but I would love to have characters of that sort of level, where it really would strike fear into them and have that relentless pursuit through a forest, pursued by this baying pack of hounds.
There was a great short story I read in an anthology called Newer York, and it takes the wild hunt and the huntsman and puts him in modern Manhattan.
What does he use as his pack of hounds?
No, it's literally the same dude. Just like he's got wild hounds, and but he's actually hunting down thugs and wrongdoers,
criminals.
Yeah. It was. The story itself was inspired by a news report at the time, but where a woman got chased down and attacked by a bunch of kids in Central Park. And in the story, he's there and starts hunting down the kids. So.
Ooh. But yes, I mean, I have to say the Celtic mythos is my favorite mythos in that book as well. I like the whole vibe. I mean, it's something it's British. It's a British thing.
Being Celt is the British are Celts by technicality.
So are French.
They are Celts by technicality.
So are French.
By the technicality.
You may not.
They're not real Celts.
The French? Oh no, that's what the Gauls. I mean, come on. If you look at it, it's all Celtic.
Don't compare me to the French. Don't compare me to the French, please.
Well,
don't do that.
Your Irish ancestors jumped off from the Iberian Peninsula.
Well, so did my ancestors.
It's not a history I'm proud of, okay?
If you really want to get down
Iberia?
to it.
Iberia? Oh, no, that's fine. I thought you said France there for a second.
No. The problem is that most of the British are from Doggerland and just forgot that they were German at one point. Anyway,
and so the great monster of stream derailment has reared its head,
which will summon the other great monster, Saxius, the great balancer.
Derail your stream, and there's a 50% chance of instantly summoning a Saxius to put it back on track.
Spreadsheet of order.
I think. I mean,
what happens is
I think the other reason why I like
a random encounter.
Then I like the other reason the Celtic mythos though is Morrigan is my favourite deity in that entire book. I think she's absolutely ghastly but fantastic.
Who am I?
The Morrigan.
Got their middle name after.
The Morrigan's not bad. Yeah.
But anyway, I like the Wild Hunt, and it's for me it's got that whole vibe that I like in an adventure. The whole horror element.
Yeah.
And I could use that in a Cthulhu adventure as well. Quite easily.
I'm sure they have one of them in there somewhere.
A lot more stuff has been getting published for that is not Lovecraftian in origin, so it's because they kind of done all of that to death.
There's a bit of wisdom here. There's no such thing as derailment, just surprise topics.
There you go.
Right, let's have the next beastie from Omanal.
You know what I'm going to mention, because I mean, if we're going to go for some of these, but how do I want to put this? Which is a little bit. It's not just one type, because I like different things, and I don't want to say it's just one versus the other. I like intelligent undead, like vampires or mummies, and in some ways, I think I like the greater mummies that were coming out of the Ravenloft, or if you get some of the other different adventures, whether that's the World of Darkness, I like them a little bit better just because they have really cool abilities. They have I love
that Ravenloft gave vampires and mummies age categories like dragons.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they did age categories for the, and it reminds me of because I was listening to the Conan books as well. where the vampires are not. They're like, but the mummies are the ones where they come back from the dead. You put the jewel in, they come back. I like they tend to be very powerful spellcasters, which fits in with the vampire mummies as well. If anyone has played Vampire, and if you look at the mummy from like first edition or so, where they have the little abashti that come up and then they can summon them and turn them in, oh, look, it just looks like, no, now it becomes a real animal. It's the
Ushabtis, yeah.
Yeah, I love those a lot. I love the idea of having, because in the background, and probably I like mummies more because I don't like the level drain that would occur with vampires, but I do like the disease that comes in, and that
the fear as well.
Yeah, it's it's a classic monster. Everyone knows what it is, but boy, when they start coming in with the spells and all the other stuff, then players like, oh crap! And now you've stolen from the mummy, which is the classic. It will keep chasing you, and it's not limited by sunlight or all these other things that you normally get.
Stupid freaking mummy and Daggerfall. Freaking terrifying thing. I picked up your finger in a dungeon because it was funny. It was goofy. And now you're going to follow me for the rest of the game wanting that damn finger back.
Well, you know what? You should have been careful about the treasure you picked up, my dude,
And that's where I think that because I want to, but that's one thing.
Yeah, there's the Scooby-Doo one yelling coin over and over.
You've stolen from it, and until you can return it, it's going to keep following you until you're dead. It's like, oh, you have to make some kind of amends. I said,
a bit like a revenant almost.
Yeah, RPG Grandma points out too that they don't all have to be Egyptian themed. The mummy is one of those ones that you can fit into nearly any cultural base, and it won't feel too out of.
even Irish,
even cultures that didn't have mummies, you can fit a mummy in there thematically in a fantasy setting and have it work, because all you need to do is have a culture that has
that preserves the dead.
Bombing.
Yeah, preserved. I would not run bog mummies as mummies because they're so incidental. Unless you have a culture, again, talking about fantasy cultures.
The Celts like.
Yeah, purposefully, but there's other undead that you could use with that. But the mummy. I mean, you could even have a Templar mummy because the Templars were known to have mummified a few of their, they're dead.
Would you argue by them that they'd be good aligned mummies then, rather than evil aligned?
No, it all depends on whether or not you think the Templars were good or not.
Or
if in your campaign setting your Templar order is good or not. The point is that it's one of those. It's another one of those ones thematically. I'm just going to make up words. Thematically, that that morphs pretty well to fit your setting. Like we were talking about, ghouls are really good. They scale. Mummies, like you need an Aztec mummy, you need an Inca mummy. You need a European mummy. It all fits.
Even Mesoamerica.
Well, you say, anyone can go look at the Mummy movie, and see some of the silliness that comes from that, and go over.
Brendan Fraser,
is that it's exactly. But you have taken something, and that's what awakened the mummy. The mummy was sleeping. The rest of it's like, we'll just leave the vampire with a stake in the heart or something. But the mummy, you have caused some grievance towards this, and until that grievance is resolved, it will follow you to the ends of the earth. And that's what I like. And I like the higher level mummies because then they are intelligent and they can cast spells and things like that. Anyway, that's what comes from it.
Let's have a shill from DK then. Come on, give us a monster that you really like.
The one that I love the most, and on the line of intelligent undead, I will have to go with the baddest of them all, maybe except the Lich. I'm going to go with a Death Knight.
I would have actually put my mortgage. You've told me this before, so I'd have put my mortgage on you coming up with Death Knight first.
Yep, I love Death Knights.
I'm surprised you're not Death Knight of Hibernia.
If you look at my icon, it literally says the Hibernian Death Knight. I'm not even joking. The guy who did this, I demanded he make me a Death Knight. I demanded it. And he was like, cool. So,
Well, even kingdoms with their Death Knights they're just so thematic. Anyway, sorry.
One of the most iconic characters in D&D is Lord Soth, for a reason. if I recall correctly, he actually power word killed a dragon once. If I remember correctly, I think he did.
That wasn't real D&D. That's Dragonlance. No, sorry.
Well, they did move Lord
technically
Soth into Ravenloft canonically. So.
Well, I mean, Tracy
But
Hickman made Ravenloft as well, so of course he was going to do it.
Fair enough.
But I like Death Knight simply because, although they don't scale well, like you can't have them at lower levels. I mean, you could, but you'd have to weaken them a lot, and that's kind of not the point to me. I like them as basically domain, not like, a lot of new schoolers will say the big bad end of a campaign. I'm like, no, I treat them as domain level antagonists, regional warlords. And they would have these the ghoul shamans or these vampires underneath them or a lich advisor. They would basically be a good rival for any fighter, cleric, or paladin types. And you can have these kind of dynamics where they were once these really virtuous warriors who fell to the dark side, or they were corrupted, or they were sacrificed, and in their moment of desperation, they swore to a dark power to save their own skin.
Well, that generally is the point of
Nazgul?
them, is that they were all fallen warriors of virtue.
Well, I mean, not even they could, because there's also a trope in stories where they get corrupted against their will and they become something monstrous. They didn't fall willingly. They just
Nazgul?
I mean, what? Well, no, not even that. What I mean is they were literally sacrificed and then reborn as an undead monstrosity, and their soul was profaned.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't choose at all, and they came back.
It's like any monster in D&D. You can always fit the lore to whatever you
want.
Yeah.
To whatever you want.
One thing about the Death Knights is that they write their own stories.
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's presented.
They're a great villain because
vampire.
They're a great villain because they, as you say, they're intelligent and they will communicate, and you can have the role play aspect too. Players who are smart enough to realize that you don't mess with a Death Knight will try to talk to the Death Knight. It's okay, how can we complete what we need to do aside from killing the Death Knight? If that's
and the funny thing is these paladin, cleric, or fighter types can actually, like you're saying, have a dialogue with them without necessarily inevitably they both know they're going to fight. It's almost a foregone conclusion, but there's almost this kind of the Death Knight almost remembers what it was like to be lawful, so he has an ethos to him. So you can kind of placate on this honor of his by well, your realm needs help. Why don't we clean up some of your problems that happen to coincide with ours? And we get this thing and you get that, and then we'll see how we go from there.
Cool.
All very reasonable.
But even besides that, it's just the Death Knight are just insanely powerful. They're insane. They have, what is it? They have 75% magic resistant. This is the AD&D version. They can conjure fireball. Is it wall of fire? Or is it something else? I think they have 2 or 3 spells. They can't be turned. They regenerate. They have +3 plates and +3 swords. They have a nightmare. God, I'm operating a faulty memory.
Could be worse. You could always put one riding a Dracolich or something. Zombie dragon.
Yeah. I mean, it's, again, they're also, you can even though it's harder to template them down, you can always template them up. I think that's kind of why I like old school monsters. They're just a skeleton. Pun very much intended. To make the monsters better or worse to suit your own ends.
I'm going to bring this up too, which is, we're all looking at D&D, but I know Iron Kingdoms has the equivalent as well. And with I guess, what is it, the Orgoth or something like that. It's a classic monster, which is great about it. It is That's what sometimes brings up is it iconic that the players are going to remember, or is it one of these things that's just cool to throw in? Which is why those are. But I don't disagree with you. I think that they're really cool for it. And
I will say.
genius.
Oh, so keep going. I will say the Halakar. Halakar, I completely disagree. A Death Knight would not lose to a Nazgul. A Death Knight is insurmountably more powerful.
No.
Not an actual Nazgul.
No, not a Nazgul.
No, because
the raids,
And my dad can beat up your dad.
Yeah.
No,
the
I mean
Wraith
the
in
sense
D&D
in
is pretty one dimensional as opposed to how the Nazgul are portrayed in.
Oh, I know, yeah, but
Lord of the Rings.
what I'm saying is that like the Death Knight, unlike the Nazgul, can't die. You can't kill him.
You can't kill a
like-
Nazgul either. They just go back and reform.
I could
I
look
mean,
at
if you
the
destroy
Nazgul
the
in-
rings of power, they kind of go away.
Well, yeah,
Whereas-
there's probably a way to do that with Death Knights too.
Well, I mean,
Sam,
the only
that's
way
right.
to do
This-
that,
this
the
is what Murph-
point that I was driving at is that the only way to do it is if I remember correctly, if you like they have like this tether to the world. If you basically redeem them or sever their tether to the world, they can pass on. But until you do that, they'll just keep coming back. Whereas a Nazgul, if you destroy their rings of power,
You mean
They're
do
gone.
the exact same thing you just described with the Death Knight?
yeah, but it's a lot easier to do that. Jesus,
My fantasy
I'm
monster is
not-
stronger than your fantasy monster.
I'm looking. I can't find my my monster book for Merc.
Google is your friend. Let me see.
No, I'm looking for the Merp stats for Nazgul because, of course, they're the right ones. They're the official ones.
No, I'm looking up the Death Knight right now.
Whose turn is it? Were we back to you, John?
I believe John hasn't given his second monster yet.
I have. I've done Darrow and Wild Hunt.
Oh,
so
that's
far.
right. You started with Darrow.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So it's Mage.
Oh, back to me. All right. Well, I know one we established early on that John and I have one that overlaps. So let's do that one next.
Let's do that one.
The Gibbering Mouther. Speaking
What does that do? What does that do again?
It's insanity.
It does some weird stuff. It's one of the original Lovecraftian monsters from D&D.
Yeah,
It's
this
that
amorphous blob with all these mouths and
mouths and
it
eyes
speaks
and tentacles.
It's
And
not
right.
directly from Lovecraft. It's just Lovecraftian in its theme.
It's inspired. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this goes into the metaphysical horror aspect. That's why I love them. The idea that from a game perspective, it's just another weird creature to kill, but it's a tough creature to kill. It's got some neat defenses, but
Yes.
but I love the idea of you've got this empty dungeon, like completely cleaned out. The only thing in there are a couple of these gibbering mouthers just sort of laying dormant. And you hear in the distance of this dark corridor, all you hear is this murmur of voices. It's like, where's that coming from? They get louder and louder.
Well, I've done my gibbering mouth impression. I want to hear yours.
Oh, I don't have one.
It sounds like my old D&D game that featured 10 teenagers. That's what it sounds like.
I think we should all have a go at mimicking how a gibbering mouth would sound. Because I've
Well,
done it twice.
If each of us individually does one, the collective will be the gibbering mouther voice.
There you
Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3.
I always imagine that the gibbering mouthers' voices, like if you were to record them and play them back and slow them down in isolation, it would be dozens, if not hundreds, of screams for help from the people the mouther has absorbed. And this is the way I like to portray them. So you imagine the horror of it. Somebody gets killed by a gibbering mouther, gets absorbed into it. You visualize the face appearing on the blob and then constantly screaming. And you got to imagine that person's lucid consciousness is trapped in that nightmare. Just giving your players fuel for, okay, well, what's this? I did a prayer again.
I will say that my gibbering mouth would probably be either a Call of Duty live chat or multiple 4chan posts given voice.
Both of those things will drive you insane, which is what a gibbering mouther does.
and maybe a few racial epithets to throw it in for comedic effect. Why not?
Yes.
Oy.
So yes, that's why I like the Gibbering Mouth. Again, it evokes this horror aspect that I think is more impactful in a D&D game than, say, Call of Cthulhu, because players tend to think of themselves as heroic. Even in old school, they think of themselves as heroic and they want to be high status. And something like the Gibbering Mouth will pull that rug out right from under them.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, they're not particularly powerful. You can throw them at all levels of party, really, and just cause mayhem. Just cause absolute mayhem and fun. They're a fun creature to have in a dungeon, as well as being very, very freaky. What was the first adventure that used them? Do you remember? A little bit of.
Wasn't there one in Simulcast?
Was it C1?
Correct. C1. Correct. Yes.
That's Timos.
You guys are just encyclopedias of knowledge on modules. How do you remember it all?
Because it was only 15 pages of any real adventure in there.
I've forgotten more than I can remember on old stuff these days.
Well, a lot of it was just cool because it was the first time you got to see some things.
I keep forgetting you guys have at least 2 decades on me.
Oh yes, we are old.
Any one of us has 2 decades on you. Combined, we've got 4 lifetimes on you.
Yeah.
One take on what there's a Call of Cthulhu adventure which has got a creature that babbles with what sounds like multiple children's voices, and it always reminded me of the Gibbering Mouther, though it was more disgusting and more freaky because it was actually made from multiple children's bodies.
Is that the Corbett House?
Yes, Mr.
There was. I don't know if you remember Doom, the first Doom on the first PlayStation. One of the background tracks was this baby screaming, this baby crying, and as the game progressed, the baby's cry morphed into something demonic, and I always found that pretty creepy. That was really good sound design.
I stumbled on that by accident in my digital music and MIDI composition class in college, where we decided there's let's go to the sample lab, and so you put in a sty full of pigs and then hit it on the low register, and it goes from scream to and it just occurs to me the Gibbering Mouther honestly is just the Shoggoth from Lovecraft.
It's the Shoggoth. Yeah, it's just the
Eyes and
Shoggoth.
mouths and absorbing people is how it kills them, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Gygax probably didn't have the rights to use them, so he just called it a Gibbering Mouth.
It wasn't probably a matter of rights. It was probably just a matter of inspired by.
It wasn't a Gygax monster. It was Harold Johnson and Harold Johnson, and who was the other one who wrote Tomo-chan? It was a two-person effort.
Which of the Lovecraftian monsters that D&D used did Gygax make? I know he did make the Beholder. That was Kunz. Was it the Illithid? Or was it something else?
Mind Flayer is not a Lovecraft monster either. It's just inspired.
I mean, the Lovecraft inspired. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Inspired. Yeah, inspired is what I meant. What was it? The Illithid? Or was it something else?
I think so.
Probably, yeah. Well, I mean, he did put psionics on it, so I mean, probably. God,
that's another thing. Going back to the Githyanki, those friggin' bastards are psionic too.
I forgot they had. I hate psionics so much.
Yeah.
So we've had our Gibbering Mouther, and that's my third one and Sean's third one. So let's have Elfbait's third one.
So this one's kind of a cheat, but I couldn't figure one. But it's a category, and it's because it's the Fae. I love using Fae creatures in games, because even the same Fae creature, because if you play them truer to folklore, the same kind of creature can be good, bad, indifferent, depending on their mood, and there's a Fae for almost every situation. You need you're in a dungeon, you can have Fae. You're in the wilderness, you could have Fae. Urban environments, Fae. They're great for background, just feel like when your party is in the local inn in the spooky Slavic village, and the old babushka comes down before everybody goes to sleep at night and puts down a platter of milk and honey before the hearth. and then they get up in the morning, and that little platter is covered in dead mice and sparrows and cockroaches and stuff, and they're like, oh, there's something going on here. It's just great for atmosphere, great incidental encounters. They make good NPCs, great quest givers, henchmen for villains, minions, foils. I mean, they just fit every role, and there's just such a huge variety of them. And that is true.
Quicklings are great. Quicklings are great. But yeah, I mean, Fae, they can be horrific. I mean, I'm going to bring up a bit of another Call of Cthulhu adventure which had Fae creatures in, and it was based on a piece of real-world Welsh mythology, which one of my players had heard when he heard the names of the creatures, but it made them all the more
terrifying.
All the more terrifying, gave them all the more impact, because they're horrible little things. Absolutely horrible
dangerous
little things.
What creatures are those?
I can't think of what they are off the top of my head.
Even some of the ones that they seem to have made up for D&D are still pretty cool. Like the Meanlock, even though it doesn't look like a Fae, what it does is horrible. It like gets you when you're in an isolated dark place and then drags you to its dark little realm where you will become one if you stay there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was.
I'm just looking for the adventure. It's the adventures. It's Welsh. It's called Plantidire. It would be Plantidire.
So it's a word with 32 consonants and 2 vowels, one of which is a W.
I will just as a rule of thumb, if you're dealing with the Fae, just don't. Just at best,
that's another one that scales really well too. Fae scale really well because you have the little minuscule incidental Fae all the way up to like mid-level, middle management Fae, all the way up to the
Oberon and Titania.
The cool thing is that the Fae also fit the same roles that you might get with demons and devils without having to go to the hells. They actually can, they're deal makers and
dangerous
oath takers and
Well, and I like what they did with the World of Darkness, Dark Ages Fae, where they got echoes and things like that make them. But you're right. It's like, well, what can you do? And like, do you travel? That's the other part is they go into the areas that aren't inhabited by demons so much, but you go in the dark forest in those areas that have the
where the veil is thin.
Yeah, exactly. Where the veil thins, kind of thing. I love the idea of the Fae. I do, and I like the Hellboy, the second one with the lords and stuff. I always thought that was kind of cool for that whole thing.
And they could also be whimsical. You can have creatures that will give you like a bit of sort of comic light relief. That
Brownies and leprechauns, indeed.
I was going to say we have a Fae creature on the stream at the moment, don't we, DK?
Yeah, I know it's you.
No, you're a leprechaun.
I'm too tall to be a leprechaun,
my
dude.
Game, the party's been sort of adopted by this hedgehog that rides a fox, who's a Fae, he's cursed on a quest, and like he's just sort of become their unofficial mascot. And, like, I get to throw in comedy relief with him all the time. Like they get treated to a feast, and they look over at him, and he's just saucer eyes and drooling and stuff. But no, they can definitely be fun. And they can be as dark and whimsical as you need. That's you're right, absolutely right. Yeah. They're a great flexible monster. Again, they scale well, and they can fit just about any role you need in a game. They can fit the role that might be occupied by just general mook monsters, because there are low-level Fae like brownies and stuff that don't do a ton.
And you can tie it into certain characters like elves, half-elves, and gnomes.
Yeah.
So
I know they factor into most of my campaigns pretty heavily, just because I like them.
Yeah, they're not bad. I just tend to treat them more. I tend to treat Fae as more malevolent, but there are occasionally ones that aren't too dangerous. But just never trust them, like ever.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've experienced leprechauns firsthand, so you would know, wouldn't you?
Well, you know,
yeah,
family
the
reunions
little,
and all, right?
yeah, them little bastards. What? Oh, Flaherty promised me that pot of gold, and I never fucking got it.
Did he give you some new shoes though?
Ah, he did. Yeah. They were comfortable, if nothing else. So
So how was it working with Sean Connery?
Oh, it's not that bad. I gave him a shillelagh, so it's not bad. Not bad.
I see. No, I forgot about no. Saurians mentioned bar guests. I like bar guests. I forgot about them completely.
What are
Do
bar
like them.
guests?
Yeah, 5th edition screwed Barghasts up though, because it made them
did
connected to goblins.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to get down to it, technically goblins are Fey lore anyways. So, I mean, in fact, Ravenloft even wrote in the old, like, what, 1st edition, 2nd edition, 2nd edition, the box set, Ravenloft wrote in a Fey version of goblins that was spelled with a Y instead of an I, so it was goblin, just to distinguish them.
Goblin.
Aren't dryads considered Fey?
Yeah, they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're...
Unicorns should be Fey, but they've in 5th edition they made them Celestials. I'm like, that's dumb. Well, I get the whole holy connection. I mean, and I mean, it depends on where you pull them, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that should be Fey. I mean, technically, trolls should be Fey if you're going with classic trolls, not the D&D trolls, which of course aren't taken from Norse mythology at all. But
no.
Yeah.
Let's because this is kind of the thing with D&D. It's just a name, and they added a bunch of new stuff to it.
No, the trolls in D&D are specifically taken from a book where they have regeneration and vulnerability to fire.
Yeah, I'm not saying they don't, but I'm just saying these are just, what's the word I'm trying to use?
Yeah, I know when I wrote up my trolls for my campaign, they don't regenerate. They're just resistant to non-magical weapons.
Rovers.
They're resistant to non-magical weapons. They are vulnerable to radiant damage because 5th edition rules. So like lights, because the whole sunlight bit. Trolls are? The way I wrote them up for my games, where they're Fey and they're consistent with the Norse mythology. So
fair enough.
I also run them as intelligent creatures, and so.
Paul Anderson.
They have inspiration from a number of mythologies as well. They're not just Celtic. Let's say they're Norse. There's Greek Fae, a lot of ancient. Satyrs and things like that.
Well, no. Okay, the Greeks and their daimons are a little bit different from the Fae, a tiny bit.
It's semantics. They all fill the same role because the term. So trolls are not specifically Fae, but the role they fit in Scandinavian folklore is the same niche as trolls. It's the same niche as stick people and hairy men of the woods in Native American folklore. It's
nature spirits.
Well, not just nature, but the whole whimsical kind of mercurial, don't trust them kind of things. So,
well, yeah, that's what I mean. The reason why I say nature spirit, it basically means any place that is not of the civilized lands, basically of the cities. Satyrs
and things like that, they fit that description. They're meant to be like nature spirits.
But at the same time, Fae in classic folklore are not necessarily wild, because you have house fairies and shoemaker elves and goblins, and you've got the Nissa that specifically hang around your house and do chores for you.
That's kind of the difference between the Greeks and that's one of the big difference between the Greeks, daimons, and the Fae, as we'll call it in Western Europe. There are no like daimons like that in civilized places like Greece. They just didn't have them. There were no dryads or naiads or satyrs or centaurs in cities. They just didn't have them. You can have.
Trying to mix the two up: the Celts and the Greek, influence. Two different things.
Let's face it. Originally, D&D was a hodgepodge of Western European myths, mostly with other things drawn in for flavor. That's
They take the pulp adventures that they read and a bunch of names that they heard from mythology and history, and they just
Yep.
threw it together.
Well, and to be
'Cause
fair,
it sounded cool.
If you look at Wisconsin, they had that Germanic, Swiss, Norse, English. They had all those myths from there.
Well,
and then
then the
everyone
original
was growing.
creators were educated dudes with serious geek tendencies, so they're gonna.
And they all grew up with the Roman and Greek mythology as well. So you have all that stuff
Yep.
coming in. Yep. So
Mhm. And they had the movies as well, So that
Well, they're like every other geek when it's in time, since time immemorial, where we're all full of knowledge from everywhere. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Right. Next creature. And we're over to Oma now.
okay, well, if he's doing that, I'm going to do a kind of a class because I like a lot of different ones, and I'll mention a couple specifically. But I like giant insectoid monsters. Your fire beetles, your bombardier beetles, your rhinoceros beetles. And I'm going to include your giant spiders in here. They don't have to be that high level, but they're great for throwing at low level and mid level characters. For a lot of this is, the giant spiders can still. What's funny is, even though the stat wise may not be as impressive, that scares a lot of people with giant spiders. And I love like the fire beetles and stuff. It's like, oh, you run out of light, you kill a fire beetle, you can get their globes.
I was about to say they're perfect for parties where you've got a magic user. A magic user is always going to try and harvest.
That lines up with
those
one of my
creatures for
choices
parts,
too.
aren't they?
That I was going to go into later on because although giant animals in general.
But I'm using insects in particular because like the giant wasps, I love the whole idea from that, or I know they brought a lot of them into the second and to Monster Manual 2, but I just love that idea because you can throw them in there. They're instantly familiar. If I say you meet a giant wasp, everyone can think of a different type of wasp, but they all think of this is a giant wasp and how dangerous it is. They have all the stuff from Ray Harryhausen, with the giant. You can just imagine and how they move.
Scorpions, giant cave crickets,
well, the giant spiders from Kroll,
giant
and Conan.
centipedes.
Yeah, I just love that whole aspect. And what's funny is they don't have to really be magical. And the bombardier beetle, which can spray, the giant ants, all these things can be. You can bring these up from low level up to about probably 5th or 6th level without any problems, and players still feel
You
it's
can
instantly
keep bringing it up there too, because you can always get into the more magical versions. Because D&D definitely did it with like phase spiders, and even like a type of demon that was a spider with the Babelith and all of that.
Yeah, I'm going to say as well. Also, they're easy to incorporate.
Yes.
They're very, very easy for a DM to incorporate naturally in a dungeon or a forest, whatever the setting that they want. You could easily drop giant insects, giant vermin of any type in there,
even in the desert.
Yes.
Well, and they work even better. So all of a sudden you go out there and you're like, "What is that?" That's one of the things I love about. And I was thinking beetles in particular, because they can be tough, they can be hard, they can do a lot of damage. If you look at the basic beetles,
they're nasty.
Yeah, they can be really nasty, but you can scale them down because it's kind of a lower level. But players, is it the rhinoceros beetle or whichever one that's called that has armor class of 2, which is pretty darn tough for a lot of, and then it has 6 hit dice, and then it does 3d6 damage or something like that. You're going, boy, that's kind of a tough monster, but players are instantly familiar with it. You don't have to explain it. They can feel like they're familiar with the same thing with giant wasps coming in. Players are like, oh, okay, I know what I'm dealing with, and these are really dangerous monsters.
One of the nastiest encounters that ever hit one of my campaigns in 5th edition, of all the things they fought in that campaign, was a freaking giant assassin bug. Like it was just a nasty bug, and its tactics was it pierced one of the guys, so it basically impaled him and had him grappled instantly with its proboscis, and then it flew off with him.
Oh yeah.
And so the rest of the party's like, well, how do we save him? And so it was left to
him.
It was left to him to try and have to fight his way free of this thing, but he's up in the air.
As I mentioned with ghouls, these are creatures that they will attack you because they are hungry. They will eat you. They will take you for food, and that was what makes them terrifying.
Well, there was an old computer game I used to play that had army fleas.
Well. I mean, giant ants work really well, and technically, if you want to get to the intelligent ones, you can get to Formians as well. But I also love that the praying mantis. When you have that, but they work so well just because they're creepy and alien enough that they to make them giant size instantly makes them a monster. Players can get that visceral fear, whether you realize it or not. I know that there are a couple players that I've dealt with that. Man, you show them like the spider, and then you show a big version of the spider, and they're like, yeah,
I remember them getting some pretty gnarly effects with giant insects in some of the older editions. There was even, I think, like the scissor beetle or whatever that basically counted as having a Vorpal attack.
Yes.
With its mandibles. I'm like, it's not even magical. It's just a bug, but it can take your head off.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean those.
And you've got the giant crayfish and the giant crabs and things like that. They all come into the same sort of category. Things that typically don't have a massive amount of hit points, but they hit hard, and they're hard to hit because they're.
Some of those things are nice and interchangeable too. Yeah. Like I've used the giant scorpion in aquatic settings because sea scorpions were a thing. I just, gave them a swim speed.
Yeah.
Well, and then they have a water spider, a giant water spider.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a lot of these things in there, and you're just, and to be fair, the other thing is by having not some of the giant, other animals, but by having giant insects, you can immediately move them from being normal size to make them feel very small, like they're playing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, because you can put them in that whole area where all of the plants are giant and everything else, and you're like, but that's one of the things that I like about those kinds of monsters. They're both familiar and alien at the same time.
Yeah.
And they work great. They work great at low levels. They work great at high levels. You don't have to worry as much about treasure, about them advancing too fast, but they definitely give that definite feel of this is a bad place to be. So, yep.
Cool. Right. DK, what's your next monster that you really like?
I'm going to go, since we talked Greece, I'm going to go old school, real old school. And I'm going to say another category, giants. I like giants. I really like giants. I like them because they're very strong, and they vary in intelligence depending on how powerful they are. But there's also this kind of like in the official lore of D&D, which you don't have to listen to, but I heard that the giants went to war with the dragons, and I just think that's really, really cool. But I also like a more classical interpretation of them, where these are almost like fallen deities that went to war with these new upstart gods, and they lost badly, very, very badly. And so they're on the material world, and they have to be slain by heroes. A very Greco-Roman idea, like Hercules going around and slaying all the giants of the old world.
I'm going to mention a couple of them because I'm not sure where. Furbog, which seemed to be somewhere between giants and fae, and then the other.
I think they were originally giants.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, that's one of those that's in between. Then the other one is Ettins, which I love as well. Just
those are the two-headed ones, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they're basically two-headed ogres, or no, two-headed hill giant kind of things, basically.
And they're extremely stupid, and the heads can have arguments with each other.
I don't know what it was like in the old school, but I know like in third ed onwards, I think they are like children or created by the Demogorgon, if I remember correctly.
I think that's
which I think is kind of
that sounds like a 4th editionism because it's current in
Probably.
5e2, but they're spawned by Demogorgon.
Yeah. Which I think is kind of funny because I think they argue with themselves just like Demogorgon does, only they're nowhere near as intelligent as he is. So,
where we're
They
talking
are harder to
D&D,
surprise.
but you also get this similar thing with Warhammer for their giants. You know,
Their
know,
giants were absolutely like infantile though, with their like
Yes.
in the games, the miniature games.
Excuse
You
me.
roll randomly to
pardon.
see what they did in any turn.
well, exactly.
Yes,
But I kind of liked the that aspect of those were giants. You know, a lot of the times you look at D&D and you're like, oh, it's like 2 or 3 times bigger. You know, their giants.
These
are
things
like,
are massive.
yeah.
Colossus. Yeah.
Yeah, like in 5e, there's a thing called an Empyrean, and they describe this thing as being like 50 feet tall. Now,
It's
like
just a
that
rename of
is
a
a
Titan from older
yeah,
editions.
yeah. I was about to say it's
Yeah.
titanic in size. It's huge, like monstrously big, and I'm like, that's a giant.
Yeah, because it used to be in AD&D, the biggest giants were the storm giants, and then anything above that was like the Titan.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think they kind of like the modern lore for the Empyrean or the Titan kind of is undermined what I said about them being they fought badly against the gods. Like the Empyrean is like a child of a deity or something, which I think is kind of lame, admittedly. It's like,
What you're saying, DK, about the differences in the intelligence of the giants is one thing for me that I really like about the original Giants module series. I don't know how many here have either run them or played them.
I haven't even read them, so I have no
Only
idea.
going through the setting of the Hill Giant.
I've run all 3, and I think the key to make them work as a DM is you've got to present the 3 main giant classes in that series as being very different entities. First, you're up against a steading full of hill giants in the first one, but hill giants are stupid, and they're stupid, thuggish, disorganized brutes. And the players should be able to use that to their advantage. Okay, if they go running in and try and take them all on, they're going to get battered. Of course they are. But a group of players who have genuinely got these characters to levels 8, 9, 10, 11 should be able to play that adventure without any real difficulty, because they should be aware of the lack of intellect of the hill giant, that you can play them against each other. You can abuse the fact that their intelligence is low, and then you go into the second. Go on.
Oh no, I was just say all I remember about studying the Hill Giant King or Hill Giant Chief is the way we got through it was involved basically a fighter PC who decided that his character was incredibly tall and a shotgun wedding.
Oh, right. Okay.
Basically,
Right.
one of the lady hill giants took a liking to the overly tall, sweet little short dude fighter, and then he was forced to marry her. That was
Snoo,
Okay.
death by snoo, boys.
we were like 12, 13 when we were playing that. So,
Well, you know, the nice thing about
but it was a great role playing way to get through it.
is those giants.
We now had hill giant in-laws.
well, those giants are giant in the classic sense, not in the more modern way that a lot of people think about them. You know, to be fair, is what are they, 8, 9 feet tall?
Well, hill giants are. The rest of them start getting bigger.
Yeah. But hill giants are kind of the low end, but they're still giants. They're one step above ogres, and I that's one of the reasons I like that aspect is the giants do have that. You go from 8 to 9 feet tall to
10.5 feet
plus.
They're another good scaling monster too, because hill giants are those ones that you can encounter at a low level and have them be a pretty nasty encounter, but they can appear in groups at higher levels, and they can be anywhere, even though they're hill giants. Hills aren't too far away from civilized areas often, so it's the sort of giant that you can really imagine stumbling through villages and stuff like that and menacing townships, whereas something like a fire giant is a little harder to have incidental encounters with.
Like to speak on the settlements, that's another reason why I kind of like the giants, is that it gives you a reason to keep the players in the overmap, like go hex crawling, going through the sandbox rather than just going into the dungeons all the time, and to actually get them exploring. I kind of like that.
But so go back to the Giant series. The second part of the series was the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and your characters are likely to. Most of them will have gained a level, but the step up in difficulty from a Hill Giant to a Frost Giant, 2 extra hit dice, obviously a better chance to hit. They do a lot more damage consistently. But once again, I mean the numbers in that module aren't quite as high as in the Hill Giants. But the combination of the terrain and the other creatures in there, it is a real step up in difficulty. But still, they are low to average intelligence and they are chaotic evil, which means they're not particularly well organized. They're still prone to a somewhat chaotic approach to being invaded. So they are... they're not likely to organize a particularly effective defense, but they're going to be very, very hard to take on simply because of their potency. But then you move to the next part of the series, and you get fire giants. Now here, they aren't much brighter, but now they're lawful evil, which means they're like oversized hobgoblins. They're militaristic. They not only have they got more hit dice and a better armor class and do more damage, but these are going to organize a proper defense. These are going to react in a methodical way to incursions, which really does ramp up the difficulty of the series. It sends it through the roof if played properly, because the numbers of fire giants in there are astronomical, and of course they're helped by Drow as well. That series shows the progress and the differences in the approaches of the giant. And the DM should really lead into it. How the giants will have different approaches to being invaded. Anyway, I've said my piece. Anything more on giants? No.
Giants hit hard.
They do. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Fire giant doing 5d6 damage.
On that note,
which is the one that throws rocks? Was that the stone giant?
They all do.
That's
They all do.
yeah.
They all do. Stone giants, the most effective at rocks. They're very good. They do more damage in comparison with the others for their size. But yeah,
You get stoned by the stone giants.
They all hurl rocks to a varying degree.
Yeah. On that note, I am going to head off though. Bye.
Okay.
Take care. Get
All
better.
right,
DK.
Cheers, DK. So whose turn are we at now? Elf
Yours.
had to step. No, I've had my third one, because my third one was the same as
The gibbering mouther, we overlapped.
Okay. It's number 3 on my list as well. So we overlapped there.
Well, we're on number 4, so it's
We're on number 4, and the first one up then is going to be Sean again.
Right, yeah. So, consulting my little handy dandy list here, one that became sort of a top favorite of mine were the Sawajan.
Yeah, I like those.
Yeah, zealot shark men. You can't go wrong. My first encounter with them was actually with the Baldur's Gate 2 game, but it was just kind of a meh. They were just another video game enemy to conquer. Yeah. But my tabletop introduction of them was when a friend of mine ran me through the Saltmarsh series for the first time, and he was a good DM. He played the religion aspect of it. He played the zealotry, and so the Sawajan took on a whole new dimension. And since then, it's like one of those things. I always look at them. If my characters are on a coast, then there's going to be
another Lovecraftian one, though, aren't they?
I think they're modeled after the deep ones. Yeah, like the deep ones have an entry in the deities and demigods, but so they're not quite the same. But yeah, I imagine they were modeled after them to a degree.
And the other thing was, talk about ones that scale. The base ones aren't too bad, but then you get to the king and the queen.
Yeah, and the princesses.
And the sharks, and they work in this big thing, and they're lawful evil, which means they all work together. It's.
Yeah.
I think as what I want to call it. And the other thing is players are not playing aquatic for the most part. So now they have that other aspect, which is you're fighting in an alien environment that favors them and not you. Because when you start attacking underwater, it isn't like slashing weapons do half damage. Like bludgeoning. I think that they do. There's some effects being underwater about what.
Yeah, you need to have spears. What you need to be spears and short swords are really what you need to be using underwater. Yes. You don't want to be wielding a big two-handed sword or a great big mace or something. There are. It's been a while since I've read the rules on underwater fighting. It's been since I ran U3, which was about a year ago. Obviously they were the final enemy in the U series. And what got me about that series is what really built up the Sahuagin for me was how the series framed it in terms of lizard men were bringing in weapons to help fight them. There were envoys from other races, the Tritons, the Mermen, the Lokathath, to form an alliance because all these other intelligent aquatic races so feared the Sea Devils.
The Sahuagin,
Yeah, and it really, I think that sort of brings it home to the player characters quite what they're going to be up against in the final enemy. As you say, that that whole zealotry aspect, it's there presented in that module as well, where there's a particularly grisly scene where they're feeding their own children to a shark.
If you're weak, they would feed you off. Yeah, there's that. And it's like, well, okay. And isn't it Sahuagin? I think is how it's pronounced. Listening to the
I was going to mention that. I mean, when we were kids, we called them Sahuagin or Sahuagin. I think originally.
Sahuagin. No, I think the official guide I looked at was Sahuagin.
I was listening to the girl who says her father's the one that created it. She said it's Sahuagin.
Yeah. Sahuagin is what we always called them because we put a German inflection on there.
Yeah.
Sahuagin is easier to say. It's the smoother.
You said you said you heard something from the person who created them. Did they ever mention what their origin was? Like where they got the idea from? I mean,
I forgot what it was. She was talking about her father, and I forgot who her father was.
Father was Les Nessman.
Yeah.
Chihuahua.
Chai Rodriguez.
Sahuagin.
Yeah, but she has it on. She had a YouTube channel.
Hooligan
videos on there. but yeah, the hooligan.
Bunch of undersea soccer fans.
Yeah,
hooligans.
If you say it underwater in their proper language, it means bow worm.
But the other part is that when you start going over and it almost he also did another one where you're like, oh my god, he liked using a lot of the stuff from like Mexico for his pronunciations, and you're like, oh my god, Kahuli Ixapital, kind of thing.
Oh, the axolotls, the psychic underwater vampire stingrays.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I say underwater because D&D also has not underwater stingrays. So
yeah, I've got a soft spot.
Underground stingrays, in the air stingrays, astral stingrays.
The stingrays are cool.
They're just really alien.
Yeah. I mean, I do quite like the Sahuagin because of, initially because of their use in one of my favourite module series that exist.
Are we on to round 4 yet, by the way? Did I miss the next round or?
Well, no.
This is number 4.
All right, cool.
It's about to be your turn. It's about to be your turn. But I think we can agree that the Sahuagin are a great enemy that can be scaled as well.
Oh yeah.
If you go up against a Sahuagin lair, you're going to come against spellcasters. You're going to up against potent individuals. I mean, the chief of the Sahuagin in U3 is pretty hardcore.
Saurian is a good
associated creatures too. Associated creatures, like sharks and crabs and stuff.
Don't they also have the king and queen, which are like 9 hit die or something? Yeah, I mean they're
Something like that,
yeah, they're rough. Yeah. So Nassarian has a good pronunciation here. Sea hooligan.
yeah.
Yes. I wonder if that's just one of the many takes on deep ones is where they came from.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
we mentioned that
Yeah.
a moment ago.
because they sort of fit. The Kuotoa also fit the deep ones.
They were also almost on my list. I crossed them out as well. They were going to be on my list because I love
Basically
Kuotoa as well.
underwater hobgoblins.
Yeah.
But tougher.
The Kuotoa?
Yeah, I like the Kuotoa.
No, the Kuotoa are not underwater hobgoblins. They're the crazy fish frog dudes that live in the Underdark.
Oh, you're thinking of you think the underwater hobgoblins are the Koala.
Lakatha, then.
Yeah.
No, that's the Lakatha are another thing. They're another fish way. The underwater hobgoblins were the coelacanth.
Coelacanth. Okay.
Coelacanth. So it's almost like
Coelacanth.
coelacanth, but coelacanth.
Yeah. So I was thinking with the Kuotoa, I mean, for me, it's their alien, the alienness. They were Sahuagin, but cranked up to an even more bizarre level.
That
Well,
they weren't specifically attached to being underwater. They were freaky frog fish dudes who could be in a cave.
Yeah.
Well,
The only reason I didn't have
they
them on the
mix the
list
deep
is
ones
I've
too.
never run D2, so
Yeah.
Well, and what is it, Blibdool poop or whatever? You know.
oh yeah.
She was pretty good looking. As
The
long as
lobster
you put a bag
pin
over
up.
her head. You know, if you put a bag over her head, you were okay. No, it's
Pin
just
up lobster goddess. Pin up lobster goddess.
anyway.
Now try pronouncing blip doop bloop doop and keeping a straight face while your players
Blip, doop,
Oh
lose it.
yeah, Blibdool poop. You're like okay.
But that was the whole thing about the way that the Kuotoa speak. They were meant to sort of speak like that, weren't they? So if you're going to role play them, they'd be going. Bloop, 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 bloop,
I just
bloop,
always
bloop.
imagined them sounding like Merman from the He-Man cartoon.
Yeah.
Or Zoidberg.
Yeah, there you go. No, that's he's a mind flayer with pincers.
He's a mind player, yeah.
Actually, the Lakatha, no, not the Lakatha, but the Kopru are kind of Zoidberg. They have tentacly faces and pincer claws.
There we go. Gene confirmed that the Coelacanth,
Yes.
or what I was
Coelacanth.
thinking.
Yeah,
They're the
Coelacanth,
hobgoblins, yeah. So many
Anyway.
to keep track of.
Yes, there was the Kapoa Chinth as well, which is the underwater gargoyles,
And then
there
there's
was
the Lacedons, the underwater
Lacedon
ghouls.
ghouls. Yes,
And then there was the Meriliths, which were the underwater trolls. Or not Meriliths, but the Marrows or something
Yeah.
like
Marrows,
that. Yeah. And then now they're their whole own thing now.
True.
But
I've never seen UK5 had got an underwater ghoul in it, Lacedon. Why did the start?
Lacedons, yeah, I've used them.
Yeah.
you ever notice that the underwater names for things in old D&D almost sounded like scientific names for things,
Yeah.
whereas the regular monster didn't?
Sort of. Well, I noticed it now. I never used to notice it when I was a kid. I just thought the names of the kid, and I couldn't say them properly. Right. Next up, Sahuagin, good monsters, good versatile. Well, not versatile in terms of environment, but in terms of levels of opponents. Suitably sadistic. And over to Elfbait.
All right, this is going to have to be my last one because I'm going to have to go. But my new scheduling has me having to bug out early now for the things. But number 4 on my list was Lizardmen. I mean, they seem really basic, but I really enjoy just their another orc kind of, but in a weird kind of alien difference way. And the fact that they were always depicted as not being tropical made them seem a little weirder and more alien. Like, lizard men would be hanging out in temperate swamps, or even, they anywhere where you had wet, you could have lizard men. And then, you had lizard kings, which were cool. And then there's Sakatha, who was even more cool.
Oh, he was horrific, wasn't he? Horrific.
But yeah, and then of course there was you'd have them riding giant lizards, and there's just all sorts of associations, like other humanoids, but they just had more character than just another goblin or an orc or something like that.
And if you liked Warhammer Fantasy, with the skinks.
Well, before Warhammer, I was a Lizard Man fan, but no.
I love lizard men, and when they came out with that, which even made them cooler to me, it's like, oh,
I liked that even early on they had the two distinctions. There were the advanced lizard men that they would talk about that even had metal weapons and stuff like that, which honestly I think that, it's pretty clear that Games Workshop's original interpretation of lizard men for the old world was directly ported from D&D, because originally their army was made up of frog dudes, not lizard men, and then they had troglodytes for their heavies, and then when the lizard man army came out, you had lizard men, you had littler.
The skinks, you had the Saurus, you had the
skinks, and then you had the Croxagores, which are basically the old troglodytes. But yeah, it's just lizard men were cool because, again, they're one of those things that ancient city in the jungle, lizard men. Scuzzy peat bog swamp, lizard men. Coastal fens, lizard men. I mean, wherever you need, you could. They're one of those ones that you can put just about anywhere as long as you've got a little bit of wetness, and it doesn't. They're not specifically put into any one environment. And then the way they were used in the modules, they were all over the place. Like I said, cool temperate environments, tropical environments. You could use lizard men, and it was
Well, as I say, that, and plus, of course, they're in the Saltmarsh series, which obviously makes them great. But one thing that did put me off Lizardman, I don't know how many of you have sat through my lengthy Ultima Underworld playthroughs, but there's a section in that where you have to learn the Lizardman language.
Yeah, I was watching you play that one.
That put me there, and I didn't play the whole bit where you have to decipher it through on the video because it would have taken forever. And I remember solving
Thank you for that.
I remember solving that bit by bit by bit when I had a very slow computer that ran the game sluggishly, and that put me off Lizard Men for life. I'm afraid.
Yeah, I always felt like lizard men were great for just primitive humanoids to have in an area, or having working for like fallen civilizations and stuff as well.
I love the fact that they find human flesh to be a delicacy, and I will always work that in because they're neutral. They just exist. They're not necessarily hostile, and I'll usually
they just don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, to them it's just food. But I'll often have any lizard men they're negotiating with, trying to persuade the non-humans of the group to sell their human food to them. Right. It always gets a laugh out of the players and some uncomfortable stares when there's new players, and it's a good time.
Those uncomfortable stares are necessary. But yeah, I mean, lizardmen are again a good versatile enemy that you can use against a small group of them against a low-level party. They will, of course, keep on the Borderlands, but also you can have them in numbers, and I suppose when you get to sort of higher levels, they become a little bit, almost a little bit redundant. But at least to mid levels, where you've got the Lizard King, who is a very potent foe for sort of level 6, 7, 8 characters. They've got use through a number of levels, ongoing in a campaign, and certainly you can have them in your game world, because they will have an impact on the environment in where they live.
I could see them damming up areas to create bigger wetlands,
and they can they only want to just exist and have peacefully and have their own food. But of course, the encroachment of humans will make them into enemies. And equally, if a group of displaced lizard men move into an area where humans are trying to settle, then the lizard men will pose a threat in that sense. So
and don't forget the Lizard King, which you did mention, is he'll form them up into an army to attack. And since he's chaotic evil,
he's horrible.
He goes from, also you get neutral lizard men to all of a sudden they're being controlled by the Lizard King, and now they're acting in an evil manner instead of just being a neutral manner.
Lizard men also make good minions for like a black dragon, because swamps, they also can if you wanted to up level them a bit, you can give them things like Frogamoths and other giant beasties to speaking of giant animals. I mean, heck, I remember in one of my AD&D campaigns, they got attacked by lizard men going on this raised highway that was raised above the swamp, and they got attacked from both sides with a barrage of javelins. And so they're stuck on this narrow highway with water on either side, and they encounter startle, like you see bubbles coming up from the water beside you, kind of following along, and then they got surprised, and this hail of javelins came flying in, and then so they all got into defensive positions. They started trying to race across the highway, and then this lizard man chief riding a giant lizard kind of crawls up, because giant lizards, remember, they had the sticky feet, so he kind of crawls up out of the water and then up onto the bridge and blocks their path. And so one of the characters braces himself for the charge, because he starts galumphing down the highway at them, waving his big old war paddle. I was kind of gave him that sort of Maori kind of South Pacific style war paddle, kind of a club. And the samurai in the group starts pelting him with arrows, and he's like got his turtle shield, and it's like repelling him. The guy who's bracing for the attack, he screws up on his attack, and the lizard basically does a swallow attack on him, gets him in his mouth, and he's got him held. And then the samurai then proceeds to end up killing the rider, and so the guy's trapped in the lizard's mouth, and then its rider's gone, so it's like it's gonna get out of there, because now it's just an animal not under control. So it just dove into the water and swam.
It's got its dinner.
So, and the player's like, "Am I dead?" I'm like, well, "Can you breathe water?" So that was a fun encounter, and so it's like, "Well, can I make another character?" I'm like, "Yes, you can make another character." Going back to Giants, that's when he begged me to play a Fearbolg, and I'm like, okay, cool, you're gonna play a Fearbolg, because it was second edition and that monster book was out, and he had been pestering me for like 3 characters, because he kept dying, to play this damn Fearbolg. And so I'm fine, play a damn giant. Like, you play the Fearbolg, and like they were going to these caves. They already knew where they were going, and he chose to play a giant. And so they get to the caves, and his Fearbolg can't get small, so he just sat waiting outside the caves the whole freaking adventure. So, anyways, I gotta go on that note. I'll leave you on that
All
gag,
right.
and have a good one, guys. Later, folks.
Okay, we're on to, I think, Omen Owl's turn.
All right, we got to bring this up because, well, it is called Dungeons and Dragons. How can you forget dragons?
I thought you were about to say a dungeon, a living dungeon.
No, I mean here, and I'm talking about first edition, because I think they became, I want to say they became overpowered, which maybe isn't necessarily fair, but they became so much tougher in the later editions that the fights took forever. But man, I love the fact that you have dragons, which can technically be scaled from fairly mid-level to very high-level characters that can create a TPK. They can be intelligent. They can cast spells. Depends on what type you want. You get good to evil. All these different ones, so it adds so much in that aspect. They have tons of treasure. Do you get the evil red dragon? Well, maybe you get the evil white dragon, which is in snow, so you get everywhere that you can go for. They're tough opponents, and I'm going to include worms, which I think was included in some of the dragon magazines, which I know that John hasn't gotten to yet, but they include the worms that are in there, which are without wings. I just like that whole aspect. You can use them as major enemies. You can use them as significant
NPCs.
What's that?
NPCs?
Yes, NPCs. You can use them as patrons. You can use them from learning. You get everything. Okay, you get the gold dragon. The gold dragon can change shape, and I can't remember if the silver dragon can either. But now he can go travel with the party to act as a guide, which I think is what they did some in Dragonlance. It allows the DM a lot of it, and if you use an adult dragon, let's say, what is it, a white dragon, which I can't remember if they have 7 hit dice or something. it's not too powerful, but they can definitely cause major damage to the characters. Players have to think when they fight because they got that breath weapon. Is it a cone? Is it a spear? And they have to have different things. Okay, if I'm fighting a white dragon, I have to be careful of cold. Black dragon is acid. Green dragon is, choking gas. A red dragon is fire. You've got all of this electricity for the blue dragon. You've got everything that you ever wanted there. So I think that's why, to me, the dragon is that classic epitome of a monster. And if you're going to have a relatively mid-level campaign, well, even for the first Dragonlance module, which I know you don't like, John, but that fight against that black dragon at the end of it still makes it a very tough opponent that can kill the entire party in one fell swoop, and they have to plan accordingly. And it doesn't have to be the ancient hit die, everything else. It can be 4 hit points per hit die, and it's still a terrifying monster.
I mean, it's often been claimed that, certainly a lot of official D&D adventures, the dragons were underused in a lot of places. I think that a lot of writers were almost scared to put them in, even though it's in the name of the game. They're the sort of enemies that you don't want to normalize in a campaign, because if you risk taking away their special nature. They're in almost every folklore. We were talking about monsters being recognizable earlier. You describe a huge red winged serpent, and immediately the player's minds will jump to those images they've got of red dragons, of Smaug, for example, because almost all the players will have seen Red, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, whatever. So we can picture them very easily, but they have to be kept special. And that's one of my problems with Dragonlance is it normalized the dragon.
Yes,
it made them almost, yes, it's in the setting, but it made them almost too common.
It made them very common. I'm going to mention, if anyone's watched Dragon Slayer, where he kills the little small dragons, he fought those, which I'm like, I can send those off against a low level party kind of thing. And then you have the mother dragon, which is far more
Vermithrax pejorative.
Yeah, so you can scale them for a lot of different things in there, and give them motivations, and they're intelligent, which is even scarier.
Yes. That's something we underplayed them. Certainly, when we were kids, we grossly underplayed their intelligence. They were just sacks of hit points, and But
the old school dragons too. The fact that they are weaker, you can also play them as being more prolific. Like you justify the fact that there can be lots of them, because yes, a fully adult dragon is going to fear a human army. Right? Whereas if you get the more powerful dragons from second ed onward, then you need to, that justifies the rarity, right?
I'm going to bring it up is you have the army, but if you look at like a red dragon, which has the incredible breath weapon, and they have the flying ability, which, if they want to leave, they leave. Unless you're flying, you can't catch them. So again, for the army, you can bring your army, but 3 breath weapons, and you look at the width, they're taking out like 100, 150 of your soldiers. And then all of a sudden, if they come in there and they get fear, they get a lot of different aspects to them. And then God forbid that they actually have spells.
An army of crossbowmen, or heavy crossbowmen with, a couple of wizards in there. If they're a prepared army, that dragon is going down fast.
But then the dragon just leaves.
He leaves, yeah. But if he engages, but that's the point, is that the dragons would know. And so, but I think overall, I agree with you that I like the OSC, like the basic D&D and the AD&D dragons, because they are more manageable. It's not a guaranteed party kill. If they engage, there's a good chance your players can beat the dragon, but they're still a nice threat. Whereas, you get into second edition and they supercharge the dragons so much that you have to keep them rare. You can't just drop one in, because it'll TPK your group without the group having even a chance.
Well, and let's look at OSE. What is the dragon has 32 or 37 hit points
on average in there? Yeah.
One breath weapon. If they crouch together, that's basically everyone except your fighters dead, up to probably about 6th or 7th level. And so they didn't get as high level in some of the ways. And you're right. That's where I think you get into the Githyanki starting to have the ancient red dragons in there and things. But when you're starting to play with that level, you're already at 13th, 14th level, which is where you're kind of fighting against
Still, you better have saved yourself a spare potion of fire resistance, because otherwise you're going to be in trouble. It's still going to cause a big dent.
And that's assuming you have fighting a red dragon. What do you do if all of a sudden it's blue? You have to really tailor it, and you have to be very careful in how that works. The black dragons are found in swamps. I liked the dragon is both iconic, and I agree you do keep them rare, but you only have to put one dragon per, let's say, about 5 or 10 adventures, and that really it keeps it common enough without making it overly common. And especially with the gold, you have to be careful in that aspect too.
Again, if you're building a campaign, the impact of having a dragon in the region will be massive. It gives you a lot of hooks, a lot of ideas, and how is the dragon good aligned, and thus a welcome addition to the region, but equally the peasants won't necessarily trust it whether it's good aligned or not, because they'll probably just hear that dragons are dangerous no matter what.
Yeah, we commonly look at our own meta knowledge. It's like, oh well, the monster manual says they're dragons, they're good aligned, so therefore everybody must know they're good aligned. So like, well, no, you don't know that. What do peasants know, right?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Well, and just because they're good doesn't mean that they don't cause havoc. That's the other part is like, oh, okay. And I'm not trying to be mean about this, but kind of the way I look at dragons is the way dragons look, like how we kind of look at, small puppies. It's like, well, you're kind of nice, but if it push comes to shove, I'm taking this, I'm taking that. And hey, you know what? To protect you, you're going to have to give all this money. And you're like,
even the good aligned ones are meant to be vain and greedy and arrogant, because they're not humans. They are a more powerful race, and thus even the ones that are good aligned, they're going to take no nonsense from humans.
And if
anger a gold dragon,
and then players are going to have to as well. The other part is it allows you to interact with them as well. They're intelligent for the most part. Many of them can speak additional languages. And then you get some of the other ones, I'm not sure, when we talk about dragons, where do we count dragon turtles, which were actually having more hit dice than the dragons, which I thought was interesting. It was 14 hit dice or something like that. And you're looking at them, it's like, holy moly, they can be truly terrifying. They were definitely one of the more powerful monsters if you ignore the named demons and devils and things.
Yes. But they weren't as intelligent as dragons. They were much more bestial creature. Yeah. If we're going to finish this stream, we're going to have to crack on. And I'm going to move on to my next one on the list. And I have a personal soft spot for this creature because it's what I used for an end of storyline bad guy in the first campaign I wrote since I came back to the hobby. I've already said I like devils. I really like devils because I think it's the whole scheming aspect of them. They're more intelligent than demons on average. They're better organized. They're going to try and ingratiate themselves and get what they want. And the first campaign I ever ran since I came back to the hobby that I wrote myself, the idea of the campaign was the party were in a remote town that they'd been tricked to go to, and they were trapped there because an old mage needed help to sort of overcome a force that was in the town, and that force, the players were believing it was the overseer, the person who was overseeing the town, but it was actually the weapon that he was carrying, and that weapon had been a gift to his ancestors many centuries before. And the whole place revered that original ancestor that had received that gift and passed it down because they didn't realize it was the weapon that was enslaving everybody. It had created a real cult of personality in the town. And that gift had been from an Iranese.
Oh yes. Oh, you.
And the idea being that the original heroic founder of the town had found a portal into the hells, but had been corrupted by a particular Iranese who had taken him in as her slave, if you know what I mean, and given him this gift that had got part of her soul in it. But then he had sworn that he would then use it for the right purposes, as in lawful evil purposes. But then he'd been killed, and thus she'd lost her connection to the world that she wanted to manipulate. And she was punished by the devil overlords for giving up a bit of her soul and losing it to humans. And this campaign was set with her coming to the end of the 300-year punishment period and wanting to exact her wrath on the now innocent but somewhat mentally enslaved townsfolk the party have to help. But the whole idea of the Iranese not being a particularly powerful devil, but the voluptuous female devil taking advantage of a man's urges, a man's desires to twist him. I love that. I love that.
I'm going to mention something. I thought the Iranese were a vengeance, and I guess that you're doing that. But I was thinking Succubi are the ones that actually did the.
Well, they were the demon equivalent, really. I like the Iranese because they're lawful evil rather than chaotic evil, which they're more scheming.
I just remember from the Greek mythology is that they would, hunt down, whoever was out there, whereas they didn't try seducing men so much. Didn't they tear apart Orpheus?
I don't know.
Anyway,
know. I should have looked up the origins of them. But I say because she made for quite a compelling enemy in that campaign. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love them as an enemy. I really do, because I like devils. I like devils full stop. I think they're great. But having a relatively low powered devil you could drop in against a low to mid-level party who can manipulate and frighten, but not be overpoweringly deadly at the same time.
Bonus points if you can corrupt a player into turning evil.
Oh yes. Didn't manage it in that one, but she caused a bit of mayhem, and it was an interesting campaign. So yeah, I'm going to move swiftly around. These are going to be our last ones, though. We've got 40 minutes roughly left on stream, which I'd imagine is going to be roughly 10 minutes per monster, and the usual 10 minutes of waffle at the end. I think that's how we.
I think we're good for time. Yeah.
So Sean, what you got for us next?
Well, my last monster is something I came across a few years ago in a game that I was running, and I was like, "Oh, what's a unique little thing I could throw in?" And I came across this. They're in first ed, but they're in fifth ed as well. And not 100% on the pronunciation, but I think they're Vargweel, flying heads with Cthulhu like tentacles, and and it feeds into the theme of body horror that I seem to have subconsciously embraced. But they fly at you, they try to eat you, and the first ed version, their bite does permanent hit point loss, so you only take D4 damage, but you cannot heal them short of a wish.
You got to save versus poison. You're save versus poison, I believe, haven't you? Or...
I think so. I'd have to double check, but there's that permanent hit point loss aspect, which is scary enough. But later editions, notably fifth ed, which is where I ran them, but you potentially get infected, and if the infection, if you're not cured, basically your head rips out of its body and you become one, right? And then you start eating your own body. So there's some more horror fun for you.
Well, there was a link between that and my last one. So I'm probably giving away my last monster.
The folio one. Okay.
But the Vargweel was in Monster Manual 2, wasn't it?
I think so. Yes. One of them. I
do see people talking about the Barghest was introduced into AD&D in Monster Manual 2 in first edition. That's for Nosorian. I was just going to check that up. But yeah, the Vargwil was also in Monster Manual 2. I was looking at that earlier. I remember that. And I love them as well. They are low level. They are low level. They are fairly fragile.
They're like the other one hit die, but
they don't do a massive amount of damage. But as you say, they are very, very frightening. There we go. That's the Vargwil.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Again, very Cthulhu-esque as well. I mean, what are they? Yeah, AC8 hit dice just 1+1, 1d4 damage. They're only 3 foot wingspan. That's all. So that little head's only going to be about
just a little flying head.
Yeah.
So what you do is you have this, you have the characters are out at night, and you've fed their fears by telling them there are sturges in the area, and then when they see the silhouettes against the moon of these bat-like wings, crap, sturges. Ooh, nope, something worse.
I am going to pick you up on the thing is if you die to a Vargwil, it doesn't mention anything about your head coming off your body.
No, that's not in first ed. That is, but it is in 5th edition for sure.
Right. That's so clearly in 5th edition they've combined them with this other monster that I was going to talk about. But yes, Vargwils are certainly my.
Because I think I know what you're talking about in Fiend Folio, right? So,
yes.
Okay. It starts with a P, just to give you a taste.
Yes, I've already given away my last one, and it's my number one. I've done mine in reverse order. It's my number one. But yeah, great similarity to the Vargwil. And Vargwils are certainly yes. When I was flicking through the monster manuals earlier, thinking, I like that. Vargwils are very high on my list.
Oh, it's a hard list to make.
It is, yeah. When you say what monsters do you like as a DM? Well, all of them.
All of them, yeah.
All of them.
The few I don't like, which is fine, but it would be. But you're right, it'd be a lot easier. And the other part was, but like we said, is some of them you can scale up, so they can use the long enemy for several ones. But Sean, is there anything else you want to say before I try going for mine?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna mention golems and those kind of things, including Ketriad columns and a few others. With the good old Ray Harryhausen, whether it's the flesh golem, the stone golem, the iron golem, the Ketriad columns, the Ketriad columns can be used at low levels, which is nice, unlike the other ones. But I really do enjoy that kind of construct because they're so classic in all of mythology. You've awakened the giant stone statue or the iron statue. The Colossus, for anyone that's watched, what is it? Sinbad and the Seven Thieves, or things like that. Or was it, you've got all of these in there. I love the constructs, and each of them are a bit different. So, the flesh golem, the clay
I'm going
golem.
to pick out now. This is what almost every monster we've mentioned up until now has been intelligent, but golems aren't. It's one of the first non-intelligent, about the gibbering mouth, but all the others
and I also talked about the strangler vines or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But I like them because you can put them in a module, and they seem to fit no matter where they are. Like if a perfect example is the Moloch, sitting here with the eyes. You could set up as like, well, if you take an eye, it triggers it to awaken, and then it comes out as a stone golem. I mean, and it works and players are like, why did you take the eye out?
Anyone who played in my OSE game will know that I do like encounters where certain things trigger monsters to activate. And they encountered 3 of them. They weren't meant to encounter all 3 of them in one session, but that's just how it turned out. All 3 encounters were ones where players have to do something to activate the monsters, and Sean's burning techniques help deal with a lot of those, sort of realizing the monsters were activating, burning them, and whatever. And in that you've got in basic D&D OSE, you've got the equivalent in the form of living statues, which can do the same sort of role.
That, and then like I said, is if you look at the mummy that I was mentioning, it's like you're going in here to grave rob, and everything would leave you alone except you decide to awaken them, and now it's coming after you. And then I like that aspect as well as you can set it up. like, oh, this is creepy. Oh, it's this, or the, like the clay golem. You can set up as the traditional, what is it, the Jew in Prague? I forgot his name. Anyway, where he was doing that. It's like, okay, what are you going to do and how are you going to handle it? And it works in just a lot of the whole, just mythology. And the funny thing was, my mother was the one that I think read me the Jewish rabbi in Prague for which is the famous one for the whole golem aspect, and that's what I loved about them.
One thing, of course, about the golems as well is that they're very easy to drop into campaigns with different themes, because of course they can be different forms of statue very easily. You just give it the golem stats of whatever it's made from. It can depict gods, it can depict monarchs, it can depict great heroes or whatever. You can use it as some form of symbolism in the game as well.
Yeah, but yeah, those are the ones I love. And like you said, living statues. There's so much you can do with it, and you can scale them up and down depending on how you want to do it. It doesn't. Not everything has to be from just the Dungeon Master's Guide. I can't remember if the Catriad columns, however you pronounce that. If they require magic items or not, but they don't have 20 hit points or something.
Caryatid.
Yeah.
But but they were very, very resistant to what you didn't do much damage to them. You had a chance of breaking your weapons against them, I believe, with the Caryatid columns.
So I mean those.
I remember 2 of them appearing in UK1, and you had to lay your weapons down to get past them, otherwise they beat you up. Shouldn't give away too many bits in adventure, should I?
Most people will forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Well, the other problem is, just because you mention it in there, they aren't sure where they appear. Especially if you have multiple columns that are. That's the other part, is you can have the surprise effect, where, if you pass, we talked about gargoyles and things like that, but if you pass by statues that are unmoving, and all of a sudden they start moving. It doesn't matter where you put them in there. It's like, how many do I have to put in? I don't have to put into everything, but players become absolutely paranoid once they've met one. They're always looking at every statue as if it's going to come after them. So,
as it should be.
Yeah.
So we come on to the final monster, and I think you've worked out what this one is.
Oh yes, well I loved her too. Was the pangolin? How do you pronounce that?
Penangalan.
What?
Yeah.
Pangolin? What?
Penangalan.
Yeah.
It's
All
double
right,
G. And
I'm
it's got a
making
funny
demonic pangolins going
It's
forward.
got a funny swirl over the E, so I don't know how you meant to pronounce it. But I looked into their origins fairly recently, because I like looking into some of the mythos of some of the more obscure monsters, and the mythical Penanggalan from Malaysia is even more horrific than the D&D version. And the D&D version is horrific. It's got lovely Cthulhu vibes to it, but they are
Wait a minute, John. Show the other picture of it in there, not just the one with the head. There's
that one.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I mean, I thought that I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 pictures. One of the few monsters actually has more than one picture for it.
Where is the other picture? There is another picture in the feed.
No,
it's in a different part of the book, isn't it?
Maybe I can't remember. I thought there was one with.
There's that one as well. You see that?
Yeah.
The head and all the guts underneath, top left there. Sadly, though, I did look up to try and find out how often that creature had been used in D&D, and it wasn't used in any modules. Its first appearance in any D&D module was as a potential wandering monster in Curse of the Azure Bonds, which felt wrong to me, because I don't see how, reading the description of the Penanggalan, that you could use them as a wandering monster. That's not how they're meant to have a base of operations. They're meant to sort of secrete themselves somewhere where they can exist during daytime hours without being found out, and then they detach at night to hunt down one. And typically it's one enemy, isn't it? They pick on one individual. And
Well, just because something is encountered doesn't mean its true nature is revealed.
that is true. That is true. But I wouldn't like it. To be honest, I think they were wasted as a wandering monster. I think it need to be developed and baked into the scenario because they're so rich in terms of.
But as a wandering monster, that could be like, if you're not using it as a specific villain or specific scenario, it could be something that comes up, and it's like now it is.
Yes.
Now it is. It's, you didn't plan for it, but now it's there. And
They're a
can be
very
just as much
complex
fun,
monster,
too.
though. They're very complex monster for a DM just to drop into a game, though.
You plan for the eventuality, but if it's not part of your main go, then you don't necessarily have to put it front and center. But there it is. The charts have said it is now front and center.
Yeah. And Gene, they don't have a percent in lair. There is a specific description of the monster as to how they exist and how they move around and where they are. It depends what time of day you encounter them, whether they're going to be in their lair or not. But what I was going to say, the original ones in mythology, why they're particularly frightening in Malaysian mythology, is they were believed to target pregnant women. They were almost if they were used to say, once you're pregnant, you get in the house and you stay in the house. It's that sort of thing, because the Penanggalan will come and get you. They all had all manner of unpronounceable names in the Malay languages. I was thinking of making a video on them. I couldn't pronounce all their names. No chance. But once again, they are an horrific monster with lots of body horror. They've got that sort of Lovecraftian feel about them. And certainly, I think both me and Sean are on the same sort of page with the monsters that we're picking in this sort of sense, in that we definitely lean towards the horror side of things. Anyone else got anything to add about the Penanggalan?
It was one that I just loved from the very picture when I saw it. The fact that its head detaches from its body, and it's to me, it was, how do I put this? It was much more horrific than any vampire that had been shown.
And yet they were only AC 10 with 4 hit dice. They didn't do a lot of damage, but it was just the way in which they did the damage and the other effects that they could have on the poor individual that they're targeting. They're horrific. They're almost night haggish in that sort of sense, in which they relentlessly pursue their quarry. So female equivalent to the Vargul, basically.
Yeah.
Do we have any honorable mentions?
Honorable mentions. I like Needle Men.
Everything in the Monster Manual, the Fiend Folio, and the Monster Manual too.
Well, except the Trask, I hate the Trask. Anyway,
yeah. I mean, ones I crossed out included the Sons of Chaos. I really do like them. Again, they're a really sort of one not for the squeamish. I like monsters that have fear effects because it can scatter a party, and it makes them go away and think about how they're going to approach this creature that's causing them to run away. Earthbound Misfit, I do like the Crawling Claws as well. I think they're pretty horrible. Golems, yes, we've just mentioned golems. Michael, have you been away? Omanal brought up golems as the last creature before last of his creatures. But other thing, I mean, I like. I just mentioned I like Needlemen. I think they're
they're kind of cool. Yeah. Sometimes everyone mentions the big giant monsters. Some of the low-level monsters were deadly at the low level and were just fun and cool to bring out. Whereas
rock grubs.
Rock grubs. I'm going to mention just because I like the name Bullywug.
Frogmen, yeah.
Yeah, well, the Bullywugs and the giant toads that they would have, and you go, you can have that. And anyone that's actually seen what like what cane toads do, it's like, they just get the big mouth. And one of the ones I do love because they did a great job. And admittedly, this is 5th edition. I kind of skipped 2nd edition. I like the aboleths.
Yes, they made my shortlist. The aboleth again, but it's the Lovecraftian, the alien feel about them.
Well, and then they hit you and then they enslave you. Plus, they had a really good backstory. We've been here for hundreds of millions of years.
Well, they have the genetic memory, so if one dies, its offspring carries its memory forward, so they have memory all the way back. What was it? Mind flayers. I like mind flayers too. I mean,
they were overused was the problem that I have. In later editions, or even when you get down there, they just, once you get the Spelljammer, it's like they're not special anymore. That's the problem I had with them, is that they made them too common.
Yes.
I've used them so rarely, so I don't have that problem, but I see that. Yeah.
I'm going to say, what was it? Dave? Yeah, I think we should. I mean, tonight's topic wasn't supposed to be entirely D&D, but we just focused on D&D because I think they're the common ones that we all know. But obviously, a lot of the monsters we have mentioned are usable across all systems, often with a lot of similarities. But yeah, we could certainly talk about favorite non-D&D RPGs on a later stream. That can go on the list.
Well, you mentioned that, but that was one of the reasons I mentioned mummies, and I mentioned different systems for it. But the aboleth is, to be fair, D&D has the most out there. And I will say this much: if you want to go for undead, one of the best things for undead is if you can get some of the Iron Kingdom stuff. They really get into some of the lore for the undead things, and then they usually have templates, and those are now. They have a 5e version now, but those were pretty terrifying for a lot of things, and they make them. Some are, they have some that are specters. I will say this much: anyone that likes, how do I say this, for real undead, that makes it very interesting. You want to talk about some body horror, depending on how you go. Exalted has some of the weirdest undead aspects that you get in there, where they craft them into these giant monsters that come around with okay, we're gonna put I know John probably saw this, is where you put we're gonna trap living creatures into like the chest cavities of these skeletal monsters, and that's how they bring them back to the the dead and things. But yeah, the Iron Lich from Iron Kingdom, that's exactly, there's a lot of them in there in Iron Kingdoms. But yeah, there's I'm trying to think of some other great monsters out there that we talk about D&D. Sometimes as a kid I always looked the most powerful, but man, some of the stuff that's about up to about 5th or 6th level was just so cool. And you go through those levels fast enough.
Tricky and manipulative ones are really great. Yeah.
Which ones?
Tricky and manipulative monsters.
Yes.
I do tend to lean towards, I'm looking at the monsters I prefer. They do tend to be the ones that are applicable to sort of levels 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Ones that you haven't used, because the game is most commonly played at 1st and 2nd level. Most commonly played. So you've probably used over and over a lot of the monster options that are presented, as well as creating your own. But once you get to sort of level 3, 4, 5, you can start throwing in things that are a little bit more interesting, require a little bit more nous, a little bit more long lasting in terms of potential ongoing enemies. And I think there's a wonderful variety of creatures around that sort of that sweet spot level. And most of the creatures I've mentioned tonight, apart from maybe the Wild Hunt, are perfectly applicable to mid-level characters. I think it's my favorite part of the game. A level 5 party and you can throw almost anything at a level 5 party within reason, and they've got a chance of getting away from it at least.
Well, and they get a lot. That's when magic users really come into their own, is about 3rd level and beyond. But I'm sorry, 3rd level spells and beyond, because then they have a lot of that. But the other part, we're talking about some of these monsters. It's just trying to think of a few of the ones in there, but you have to put the high level monsters have to be used sparingly, to make them feel special. Whereas like the giant monsters, giant toads, giant snakes, giant.
Oh yeah, you just throw them en masse.
Yeah, you can throw them in mass. You can throw them in there. It keeps it interesting. They have different abilities. Giant centipedes, giant spiders, and players don't necessarily feel, as long as you throw in some other stuff. Like, oh, okay, I can deal with it as we're going through it. But the other one I like are trappers and lurkers.
Yes. We have got a late entry to the stream. I mean, there's only 16 minutes of the stream left, but not seen you on stream for a while, dude. How are you doing? How you doing? Not seen you on here for a good year or so, I think.
No, it is just that I don't think I have anything interesting to bring to the table.
You're 50% devil. What's the other 50%?
Swedish.
Wait a minute. You have not said what the other half is. No, sorry.
I think it's better if you talk to Saxius about it.
Well, since you're saying that you're Swedish, I assume, or you have that background, what are some of your favorite monsters from like folklore and things that you like to throw in?
When it comes to myth, I like if we're talking Scandinavian things, I especially like Scandinavian dwarves, or more of the mischievous kind, I would say, not your burly standard dwarves.
Sure.
Yeah, we were talking about fey creatures in general earlier on the stream, so I'm guessing it comes under the sort of like the mischievous and potentially dark fey. They are alien to the way humans think. They can be whimsical, but they can be deadly at the same time.
I'm going to say this much: has anyone here played Basin or read through it?
I tried. I did a one shot last October. It was interesting. Sort of Call of Cthulhu light, I guess. Right?
It's kind of weird because it's usually one monster you have. Oh, did he leave? You usually just have one monster, and you have to figure out how to deal with it. And it usually gives you different ways of trying to deal with it. Combat's pretty deadly, though, when you look at it. But
so it was a fleeting visit by Doof. A fleeting visit.
I just figured
Popped it.
You cut out or something.
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of, what are some other like mid-level monsters I enjoyed. We talk about some of the things, but unicorns, griffins, hippogriffs are all great for players to get something where the how do I want to put it? The goal is to actually capture the monster, not to kill it.
Right.
To make it as one of yours, and I think there's that aspect of, everyone wants to say, well, this is what we have to fight. Well, sometimes it's like you have to kind of fight it, but you also have to not kind of fight it.
I have to say, I'm not a big fan of what has become a bit of a trope. I think it's become a bit of a trope where characters try to take monsters as pets and think they can just tame them and keep them as pets. That seems to be a bit of a thing at the moment. I'm not a big fan.
Well, I was thinking that, what is it, hippogriffs and griffins, and the two don't like each other anyway. And then, of course, Pegasi and unicorns. These are the traditional things that you would have about taming them. But yeah, but those are some of the. Everyone talks about their monsters without overpowering them. Those are the kinds of monsters you can give to kind of a paladin to get his, his steed, or
yes, yeah. Well, there is a difference. There's a difference between a pet and a mount.
Yes.
And the whole idea of getting a flying mount if you're a warrior of some sort is cool. And a hippogriff, it fits that bill, or Pegasus, obviously, if you're so aligned.
It's cool until you fall.
Yeah. Well, and I think the original one, if you look at the white box, if it fell, your character died, and that was the end of your character. There are some weird things in there. The other one I want to mention is I like monsters that kind of sneak up on you that don't necessarily. I still like ropers. I know that's one from A4. And then what was the other? The cave fisher. Those.
I love the cave fisher. That's really interesting quandary. Certainly in A4, where they've got to get over that really deep pit, and there's cave fishers. Yes.
Well, I like the cave fisher, and I like the roper too. I like the whole idea of it. It's just it's a stalagmite, and you're like, No, it's not.
No,
And
it's
it comes,
not.
Yeah, and that's a
And
tough
neither
one.
is the one next to it, and the one next to it as well, as they
Yeah.
go pew 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 down from the ceiling.
Those are piercers, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's to me what, and I know that 5th edition started rounding them out. That piercers were the immature version of the ropers, which I thought was kind of cool when they were doing that. But yeah, some of these monsters are tough for a 5th level party. You know that, especially if you caught unawares. Um, uh, I know some people love mimics. I never liked mimics myself. I don't mind some of the ideas, but I really like the trapper and the lurker. It's like, oh, all of a sudden you come in the room and it falls down on you, or it comes over.
I
and
like
grabs you.
monsters as well that you can add into a campaign sneakily, and have them as part of the campaign without the party really realizing their true nature. Lycanthropes, for example, or doppelgangers.
Oh yeah.
Those sort of things, which might reveal themselves after months of play, after they've gained the trust of the party.
My problem with doppelgangers is the great in concept there. The practice is weaker, because the idea is that the doppelganger will want to ideally take over one of the characters, a PC presumably, and then inhabit them. But then you need the buy-in of the player to do that, and they need to be able to do it right.
But they would work great with a follower or retainer.
Yes, taking over an NPC, not a problem, but it's when you try to get a PC to do it. And I mean, I know my players, I know who could and couldn't do it, and would play it to the hilt.
Sure.
But it's like you're never going to get the full mileage out of a doppelganger going with that strategy. You got to basically have them always copy the NPCs.
I'm trying to think of what are some other fun iconic monsters that I can think of. I mean, I heard people talk about Nagas. I love the idea of a Naga that comes in, and they can talk. I still like, a little bit different, which is I still like some of the Sphinxes that come in and ask questions. And, it's this. But again, the problem that comes into it is that's the kind of monster you only meet once in an entire campaign.
Yeah.
And I think that's. Don't get me wrong. I love monster manual books, and you get like 12 or 1400. But so many of the really interesting monsters you need to keep very rare, so you only encounter them once or twice, or they're a reoccurring character. But you can't just like load them up.
Straw Piglet. What does it mean about you? It means you're the sort of player I would like to have in a campaign, and I'd have a little chat to you on the side about taking out one of DK's characters. I think it'll be funny.
You
don't have DK's listening at the moment. Sorry, DK.
Well, I guess he's going to play The Last of Us, and I don't want to get political, so don't take it this way. But if anyone has seen the presidents, Obama, Trump, and Biden playing D&D, that's a pretty funny series as they go through it, and it's like as long as you can take it in tongue in cheek, I love watching that as they go through the adventure, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see this. I can actually see them. It reminds me of playing with some of the players when I was a young kid. I was like, oh my god, you just didn't do that.
Gene, this third edition monster is probably based on the Cthulhu child of Shub-Niggurath, because I know the children of that particular Cthulhu entity are trees that can spawn things. So it may well be that third edition monster was born from that.
I'm going to mention one other monster I've always loved, and it's not just one. I still love dinosaurs from X1. Where I mean that whole thing with the drunken ankylosaur and some other things that I love, pterosaurs. I still love that anything that has the Pleistocene or the or earlier, dinosaur monsters. I'm like, they're just fun. It's the whole thing of like, okay, you can go through here, just be aware, stay away from it. Don't always try fighting everything. But that's one of the reasons I loved X1. And I know you were talking about the covers. Yes, the T-Rex looks horrible, but the rest of it looks just so. That's it just reminds me of the whole Forbidden was it Forbidden Island or whatever, for anyone that had the Ray Harryhausen. Like, yes, I want to go play there. It just looks so cool. So yeah. When Mega Fun was really mega, yeah, absolutely. But I love the dinosaurs because they can be like dragons without being dragons. They can be kind of dumb without, but they're still terrifying.
Big dangerous animals from another time. Yeah.
Yes, and it feels like at that point you're going into a world. You're taking a step back, and you can throw in everything. You can throw in the giant, giant hornets and wasps and everything else. And what do they have? 4 hit dice for giant wasps?
I think so. 3 or 4. It's up there. They're hard to kill.
Yeah, like, oh my god, you don't just go up there and I love the picture that they had too, and I can't remember if it was from I1 or from the Monster Manual that they had it.
Let's say to Gene's comment again, talking about that particular creature spawning orcs, or whatever, and the inspiration. A band I have mentioned quite a few times on streams, the goth rock band, the Fields of the Nephilim. Their song "The Watchman" actually quotes Cthulhu and talks about a creature with 1,000 young, which is based. The 1,000 young are those trees that spawn things, and that the lyrics of that song to the Watchmen are all come from that sort of mythology, which is one reason why I like the band and using them as inspiration for making adventures, I think. Anyway, just off on a tangent. We're talking about dinosaurs.
Well, no, I'm just trying to think of just some of the cool monsters. It's nice to have all the demons and devils, but you'll almost never see them. You might see 1 or 2 here and there. That's the problem I think I had with some of these monsters. Is as a kid, you're like, oh, these are the coolest. It's just like vampires. If you throw too many vampires in, they get very old. To throw in lots of orcs is like, oh, okay, they're orcs. But it's those are just the things I've noticed for some of them. I'm trying to think of what are some other. I still like the bullet, especially if you have halfling characters.
Yeah,
that's what it goes right for.
Nom nom nom, land shark.
And what's the Ankeg? What's another one?
Ankegs, yeah. Well, Ankegs are great because then you get this series of tunnels underneath, and it's like a mini dungeon on the fly.
I'm trying to think of what are some of the other ones that they have out there that are. I noticed that was a big thing in the Monster Manual too. Is just a lot of giant insects. They're like, oh, we're going to go through this. Got whip scorpions, silkfids, and blah blah blah. You're like, oh, okay. I probably learned more from that book on different types of insects than anything. Even though I grew up in the South and we have a lot of those. Well, and owlbears, I just love the idea. Oh, grells. Yes, I love a grell here.
Floating brain with a beak and tentacles. I mean,
yes.
Who created that?
I mean, that just is so cool looking at that. And the theme folio picture of it is great too.
Yes, that picture of a grell is superb. That's Russ Nicholson, I believe.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that are. I will say this much: 5th edition has brought in a lot of stuff and given a lot more depth to some of them, but maybe it's the way that 5th edition is presented. Is it feels so vanilla and bland instead of really ramping it up like they could have.
A lot of them became sacks of hit points. I mean, I think the best edition for actually giving the monsters detail was 2nd edition. That monstrous manual and the monstrous compendiums.
They had the whole ecology sections.
Yeah, I think that was excellent.
And the Dragon magazines, anyone that used to read those before 2nd edition came out, which was Elminster's Ecology, really helped flesh out a lot of things, which I thought was pretty cool for each of the different monsters. I'm trying to think of I still like the giant krakens and things, the giant octopuses, that so many things you can throw out there that are a lot of fun.
There's no end to it, and it's all situational. The campaign, my first ed game, Team Good, as I call them, they've been playing since the 70s, so there's nothing that really surprises them from the main books. But I throw something with a twist at them, they can't figure it out. Like one little twist on a regular monster, and it's a whole new game for them, and they love it.
So Iron Kingdoms, there are different types of trolls, and they have they've got the swamp troll, which has the tongue that flicks out and acts almost like a giant toad. They've got the fire troll, so it's got fire. They've got the ice troll, the winter troll, the glacier king. They've got a bunch of those in there. The troll king, the sea king. We're talking anywhere from giant monsters to fairly smaller ones. I love those. Yes, a frog troll, a straw piglet. Yep, it's called and again, if you play 5e, they have a 5e version, and I think they're going to come out with the monsters for that. But it's a really cool aspect of how they did trolls. And I actually liked how Warhammer did the trolls. Yes, they regenerate, but they're not in. But you'll kill them. But if you cut them the wrong way, they spray acid all over you for something. And there's a lot of really cool things.
Troll.
Yeah.
I like the Greater Medusa for that idea.
Yes.
You slash them, and then the blood might get on you, and you instantly die.
Oh, I love that was one I was thinking about. Again, but that's one of those that you might meet once in the entire campaign.
Yeah. Well, the Greater Medusa is like your Clash of the Titans type thing. It's a big deal as opposed to one of the little lesser ones running around.
Yeah. I mean, these are end of adventure type bad guys, aren't they? These are you don't throw these in multiples.
Well, and what's funny is you only say like 1d4. I'm like, where the hell are you getting this many? I still love just regular Medusa, where they can cover their head, and you don't know it until all of a sudden they reveal their head, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm screwed. And they're intelligent.
But how many of us are going to fall for a hooded woman, shapely woman?
That doesn't mean they're automatically hostile too. Like they have motivations and wants and needs. So it's they will be negotiating. Even if somebody knows who they are, they'll mask themselves up so they don't hurt their potential allies. And
that is true. That is true.
Well, I'm going to mention this much. It depends on how often you have your women cloaked and hooded. Mm-hmm. If you make it fairly common, you really wouldn't know. It's like, oh, okay. Let's be honest. When we played a little bit different though, is when we played with those. When we played, what is it? The last Call of Cthulhu game we did, where I pulled the hood back, and all of a sudden I saw the faces. I'm like, okay, you don't know what you're dealing with. There could be lots of them that are out there with hoods.
The hooded sort of worker,
yes.
And to realize that the head did not match the body and had actually been crudely sewn on backwards, and it was a guillotined corpse with the wrong head attached backwards. So you pulled the head. You were stood behind. You pulled the hood off, and you looked from behind straight into the eyes of a dead person. Lovely.
That was another time I screwed up by dropping my pistol. I dropped the pistol that time. We lost the lantern. There were several times we're just like, what the hell? But to be fair, we did it the right way. The frogs are great. That's one of the things with the toads and the frogs that they have in there. I love that. D&D has so many great monsters that you'll never go through all of them, which helps. No. But there's so many that are so situational. You're probably wasting a good third of the book.
We never talked about using regular animals as
bears. Yeah,
bears. Yeah, and I like using common animals in the majority of my encounter charts too, especially in the wilderness, because that's what you would encounter predominantly. And I had one player complain once. He got offended because it was his first time playing D&D like 20 years ago. That they encountered a pack of wild dogs that was coming at them, hungry wild dogs. He got offended. He's like, you got a plethora of fantastic monsters. You could throw a Medusa at us, and it's dogs. What kind of stupid game is this? It's like, you haven't earned the right. You haven't survived those dogs yet. You haven't earned the right to a Medusa.
Well, and that's true. That's the other part. What's the other one? You have that. You had the firehounds. the
Hellhounds. Yeah.
Hellhounds.
Yeah, the Hellhounds. I can never remember the right one. I keep on saying the horror or whatever, the HOAR. But yeah, the Hellhounds. You had the ones that
Death
were
dogs.
there are a lot of dogs in there that you can throw in that have their own special abilities. And the other one I did love, which is not used too much, but they had the toy with it, which was the Nightmare Steed.
The Nightmare.
The Nightmare. I thought that was really cool too. Which works. Yep, you got Blink Dogs, but Blink Dogs are good. They're lawful good.
When I was 12 years old, I coloured in the Nightmare in my monster manual. Let's just see if I can find it. Guess what colour I coloured it?
Black.
That's my Nightmare now in the monster manual.
Oh man. Oh, it's so terrible because it has those wonderful ribs and everything else,
and I coloured it black. Yes.
But the idea of that is if your opponent has a nightmare, it helped fuel that aspect too.
Oh yeah. An evil warrior riding a nightmare it's a classic.
Well,
I think nightmares are fantastic.
And if you use it with a skeleton warrior, it makes it even more interesting. There's a skeleton warrior on top of this. And yeah, I looked up the skeleton warrior, which I guess is different than the Death Knight. But yeah, there's so many great things. When you talk about the Nazgul, we talk about all of these monsters, but the Nazgul are fantastic, though they're unique monsters as well.
I mean, I do want to look up their stats tomorrow now. I'll put my.
You make a whole video of it.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe, maybe not. We could see.
The Witch King of Angmar. I mean, but sometimes if they're named, I don't like using them so much because now we're talking about characters rather than a monster. When we're talking about skeletons, I agree. Liches, skeleton warriors. And you can use giant skeletons. I don't remember if those are in which ones those are in, but you can use giant skeletons, regular skeletons. You can scale up skeletons too if you want to. I think.
No, you can do it if you want. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, we have hit that pumpkin hour. We've gone over the 3 hours. It's 9 minutes past midnight here in the UK, which means.
He can barely think he's so tired.
It means I'm about to polymorph into a large member of the squash family. So
you're just out of your gourd.
Well, you know what? The problem is that he keeps getting bounced back and forth, over the
net. Anyway, I think we've had it's been a different stream tonight because I wanted to get everyone sort of go around the table and get everyone sort of.
You made me do a modicum of homework, John. I don't appreciate that.
Bit of homework.
Wait. I was the one that brought it up, if you remember.
You did, yeah. No, well, thank you for that. But I am going to have to head towards my my warm bed because I have work tomorrow. Daniel pops in now. You've been lurking, have you, Daniel?
He was here
Thanks
earlier.
for popping back.
I saw him pop in.
Yes, I didn't see any earlier comments, but it looks like he's been lurking. But thank you to everyone who has contributed in chat tonight. Been lots of activity there, lots of just reactions and chat about what we're talking about. It's always nice when chat talk about what we're talking about because it means they're paying attention. They haven't gone off on too many tangents tonight. Wayne, I was going to say I start my streams at the same time every week. So every Wednesday, 9 p.m. UK time. Every Friday, 9:30 p.m. UK time. It's up to you guys to convert to whatever wrong clocks you use, because of course my UK clocks are correct. We don't want any more tangents, Mark Hawkman. No more tangents. We kept on topic really well tonight. But I'm going to say thank you now to those who joined us on stream. We had a doof pop in for all of about 30 seconds. Sean, would you like to shield your channel before we go?
Yes, please come join, watch Mage's Musings. I do game recaps, I do silliness, I do general theory crafting. I'm working on a video tomorrow talking about how to give an old school twist to your 5e game. Hopefully that doesn't earn me too many downvotes.
That's absolutely. I mean, I did a couple of videos on adjusting 5th edition rules, but I'm at the point now where I've just like,
I'd rather just play old school, yeah.
Yeah. I spend too much time fighting 5th edition to make it do what I want it to do. I like its simple core mechanic. I like advantage and disadvantage, but there are so many things about it that just feel wrong to me. So,
but we're also experienced with older games too, so it's easy to jump back. But let's say you've got a person who's curious about old school, but all they know is 5th ed, and it's like, all right, well, give your game the feel and see if you want to try what old school is like before making the full.
That's how I started my newer group on old school games, was by converting old adventures and creating my own campaign with an old school feel to it, with resource management and that sort of stuff, to make them start thinking a bit beyond the heroic fantasy. Yeah, I know being old is a pain, Wayne. It's something we all suffer. Are either of you 250 yet?
Give me about 2 more months.
Yeah, I just turned 2 months ago. So
2 months ago, right? Okay. You didn't shout about it, did you, on stream?
No.
You kept it quiet.
Well, as you get older, you don't want to admit you're getting older.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it. I didn't make a big deal of it,
No,
but we had talked about it leading up.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I actually kind of look forward to it because I figured I'd be a lot more old and haggard, though my knees sometimes disagree, but I figured it'd be like the old man, like I'm barely moving. And I'm like, no, I don't feel that way yet. So
Wayne is admitting to being 66. So yeah, you've got 15 years on me. I'm 51. But yeah, it's been a nice constructive stream tonight. We've had Elfbait in. Check out Elfbait's channel as well. Thank you, Elfbait, for simultaneously streaming, and of course, Mage simultaneously streaming as well. Omanel, thanks for joining in as always. We had DK in for a while as well. Not feeling 100% at the moment, but contributed with his spiel for Death Knights. What was with Giants? We had a good talk about Giants as well, which was good. So we've covered lots of monsters, reasons why we like them, and I think we generally agree that we've covered a lot of classic monsters along the way. Some obscure ones, but a lot of classics have cropped up, which is nice. So I'll be streaming again on Friday, and we had a little vote last time to see what we do this Friday, and people want to continue with Midnight on Dagger Alley, so we'll be having another go at that, but playing the assassin this time, which is a different starting point, a different goal, which is one of the good things about the adventure, is that you've got different goals for different characters. So 9:30 on Friday, my time, starting in the afternoon for most of you guys. But thank you all for joining. Thanks everyone in chat, and I'm going to sign off now. So see you again soon.
Good night, everyone.
And we even stayed on topic the entire time almost.
We did, yeah. Most of it.